three legs,
No, they
do I
both have
remember?
three legs.
They both have three legs.
Good evening.
2 tripods.
It being on or after 7 o'clock, I'm going to open up the July 17th meeting of the Georgetown Conservation Commission. And this evening, we have a number of hearings on the agenda and some meeting minutes and bills to sign off. And do we want to start with bills, or do you want to go into the hearing? Or we can go into TIDS, I guess.
We can continue TIDS and
Okay.
Main Street if you are so inclined.
It being on or after 7:01, I'm going to open up a notice of intent for TIDS Junkyard GCC 2007-11. That's to complete site remediation under Chapter 21E, followed by construction of a 16-unit senior housing development with associated grading, roadway, and septic, utilities, stormwater, etc. And I'm also going to concurrently open up TIDS Junkyard GCC 2007-12. That's the revision of the plan to construct the 16-unit senior housing development with associated grading, roadway, septic, utilities, stormwater, etc. And have we heard from the applicant on this? These,
I haven't heard anything in 2 months.
I guess our communication is breaking down again.
Yes, sir.
Did it ever get good?
We had 2 really productive meetings, and I thought we asked them to do a little bit of additional sampling, and I thought we were really close
I
to
thought
closing
we
out.
indicated that they needed to withdraw and, again, refile based on the longevity of these hearings and the fact that no one except myself probably was on the original ones, and nothing beyond that.
But, I mean, as far as we nailed down a good 2 or
Yes.
3 action items of things the commission was still concerned about, and I thought that was a fairly reasonable list that they could close out in fairly quick order. Again, I haven't heard from them. I'll reach out more next week and try to get some closure on this.
What were they? I don't remember.
Some additional sampling on the area that could be considered open space someday, that would be donated. Some clarification on the buried materials as far as like ground penetrating radar should be done, or some way of assessing how much
There
buried
were
material.
cars buried out there,
Yeah,
that's right.
and stuff like that. Honestly, I forget the third thing.
Yeah.
Well, as Fisher, that was on the land that was to be donated, because
Yeah.
initially they didn't want to do sampling out there because of cost, et cetera.
I think they actually did do a couple of samples out there, but didn't really focus on it because they were never planning on developing it. And as I recall, a couple of samples were hot, and it always confused me why, if the DEP closed it out, they would leave a few spots really unassessed. Never actually made sense to me, but. So looking to continue that to September 18th at 8 and 8:01, please.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we continue TIDS Junkyard, GCC 2007-11, DEP 1610666, and, oh wait, I'll do them separately.
Do 'em separate.
To September 16th, did you say?
18th.
18th.
18th at 7 o'clock?
8 o'clock, please.
Oh, at 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Super.
That's a motion, it's been seconded. Has it been seconded?
Second.
The motion, and it has been seconded, to continue TIDS Junkyard GCC 2007-11 to September 18th at 8 PM. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Now we have the other one. I'll entertain a motion to continue that as well.
Mr. Chairman, I'll propose a motion to continue TIDS Junkyard GCC 2007-12, DEP 1610661 to September 18th at 8:01.
Second.
There's a motion, it's been seconded to continue TIDS Junkyard GCC 2007-12 to September 18th at 8:01. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining? Thank you. And let's see, what else do we have?
We do East Main Street.
East Main Street. It being on or after 7:10 PM, I'm going to reopen the project for East Main Street, GCC 2014-09. That's the Georgetown East Main Street Skate Park Project, including the construction of a gravel road, parking lot, concrete skate park, gravel dog park, and Pony League baseball field. And I understand we've been asked to continue this.
We got the third-party review yesterday evening.
I did actually take a quick look at that.
No huge, I wasn't surprised by any of the comments. There was nothing huge pointed out that we didn't.
Did we already have a third on that? No?
This was
It
the
was,
third.
this is the third. It got done, we got the memo yesterday. So it really hasn't had time to brew and have their engineer review it
Well,
and respond.
my review of that, my quick review of that, there was nothing insurmountable that couldn't be accomplished here. It was
But we
pretty
didn't have
simple
anything
stuff.
like last year or the year before when they were, never went to a third party? We just did the site walks?
Previously, we just did we had an ANRAD locking down the wetland line, did a
Yeah.
site walk for that, then they filed a notice of intent. We did a site walk for that, that got withdrawn without prejudice, and they
Okay.
reapplied with this, with a more formal site plan, more detail, more engineering work being done. So,
Basically the same plan.
it's
though.
identical, yeah, it's identical.
I thought she raised a lot of really important points, though, and there are a lot of
There's some big picture
Big-
stuff.
big picture, big questions
The alternative
about that
design
project.
stuff. There's no like the engineering design of this. The engineering of this project's actually straightforward. It's a soccer field, you know. It's grading and flooding and stuff like that. Some of the stuff that I'm concerned about, and she brought up, were the kind of bigger picture, alternative design. You know, does it make sense for this site? Not really, you know, in that spot, is it gonna work? It was more of a big picture concerns. So, and it kind of mirrors my concerns also.
Well, also asking them to provide alternative plans for reducing the size
Yep.
of the parking lot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The size of the parking lot was due to the, needed so many cars, right? So many
Yeah.
spots.
So they asked for continuation. I just want to give a quick update. We really can't delve into too much of the
Sure.
details or making any decisions. Looking to continue to August 14th at 7:30.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue East Main Street, GCC 2014-7, DEP 1610783, to August
14th at 7:30.
August 14th, 7:15.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded, to continue the East Main Street notice of intent to August 14th at 7:30. Is there any discussion? Did they request that date, or did you?
I recommended
Okay.
that they continue, because otherwise the town has to pay for an engineer to come in here just to say, hey, we'd like a continuation, because we're not ready yet. So I recommended they continue, and they put in a request.
No, I mean, are they gonna be ready on the 14th? or-
They asked for 2 weeks,
Okay,
so
I mean, I'm fine with it, I just wondered whether we were giving them enough time or too
Yep.
much time or
I
whatever.
would rather, it just put in there administratively. If they're not ready, we can always bump them. I'd rather have them be ready to rock and roll sooner.
As soon as possible.
Exactly.
Okay, that's all I have. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Wait,
Good.
Zoom. I'm really eager for them to answer the questions that were in that third-party review. I really would like them to answer the questions about are there any alternative sites? I mean, given the size of the waivers that they're asking for and the proximity to the resources, I would really like them to provide us with a lot of clear answers to have they looked for other sites? There is a specific paragraph in that third-party review that deals with why should we grant such extreme waivers, and what are the alternatives that they can suggest, because it's pretty extreme what they're proposing. So I would like them to concentrate on that.
So noted. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Thank you. Let's see.
Do 11 Winter Street, I believe. What time is it? Yep, we can do 11 Winter Street.
It being on or after 7:30, I'm going to open up the notice of intent for 11 Winter Street, GCC 2014-01. That's the renovation of a natural grass athletic field to include related stone base, earthwork grading, drainage improvements, parking renovations, and installation of athletic lighting, and a filled synthetic turf field. And as I recall, we actually approved this notice of intent, but the hearing is still open,
Correct.
awaiting the revised plan.
We did receive the revised plan, and the comments to the third-party reviews have been accepted in, and that can be attached to the order of conditions, which were the two requirements for closing out the project tonight.
So we can close it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close 11 Winter Street, GCC 2014-1, DEP 1610775.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to close the notice of intent for 11 Winter Street, GCC 2014-01. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Thank you. And let's see, now we're kind of at a point where we're not
So
quite,
Bills?
We can do bills.
we can do bills,
I'll
we
be
can
right
do
back,
meet
though.
minutes if we have them.
We do not have any minutes to approve tonight.
That's good, I didn't have time to read.
That's why we don't have any to approve. Action. We got a invoice in from Parker River Clean Water Association regarding the Blanding's Turtle work that we help fund.
Mhm.
I was talking to George this morning or yesterday. They had a really good turtle year. I think they'll be submitting a little summary report to us to kind of explain some of the stuff they found and the numbers. Somewhere around 6 or 7 nests, something like that they found.
This is down by the soccer field, basically?
They're actually doing work there. They're doing some work in Groveland.
Mm.
They have 3 or 4 sites. The water department, more on the water department.
Yes.
And by those, there's a couple of spots that have a fairly large population, so they bounce around. Groveland has a pretty decent population right across the border. So that is for $1,150. Office supplies for the department, $80. Building supplies for Camp Dennison, $24. Some
May-
electrical
may-
supplies.
Make a note, we've lost quorum.
Okay. Paying our third-party reviewers, BFC Group, for some third-party work they've done, $1,914. And we'll wait till John gets back to vote on. Actually, we don't have to vote on these. These are, actually, we do have to vote on these.
Yes, you do.
I have some reappointments to the Camp Dennison Committee.
Who are they?
Mr. Lacy, Gordon, and Lucerio. I'm not familiar with John.
Mr. Gorton.
John?
He goes by Jeff.
What about the camp manager? I haven't seen his name float around in like years.
We haven't. I will ask them / remind them of their kind of yearly update and review.
So
on
there's
how
a
things are
liability
going.
issue there.
Yep.
What is that?
If he needs to be appointed.
Oh, he hasn't been.
He's technically, he's an employee,
Right,
and he has to be kind of, his term is 1 year. So,
okay. How long has he been there?
Don't recall specifically.
yeah, give or take.
Really?
It's been a while. Almost, I think
Wow,
there was one person
that's
here
great.
for a couple of years before him, since I've been here.
That's
So-
terrific.
Yeah, he likes it down there. It's a good fit.
That's
It takes the right
perfect.
person to do that.
Took a little while to find that.
So, looking for a motion to pay bills.
Motion to pay the bills?
Is there a second?
From beyond, second.
We have a motion that's been seconded to pay the bills, as read by Steve. Is there any further discussion? Yea or nay? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained.
Looking around 3 reappointments for the Camp Dennison crew. Open Space Committee. Open Space Committee, Subcommittee, sorry. Conservation Subcommittee. Yep, someone will make one. Thank you.
So do we have to move for each of them separately?
You can do it together.
You can do one motion if you want to, depending on your,
Like this.
Let's do them all together. Go, John, go.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Robert Gordon, James Lacy, and John Cicero to the Camp Den Commission,
committee.
Second.
We have a motion to appoint the three individuals as read by John to the Camp Dennison Committee. Is there any further discussion? That appointment is good for 1 year?
Should be, yes.
expires on the 15th, 2015, so yes, 1 year.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained. Thank you.
So whenever we have, we do the agenda, I try to put them close together, so when there's continuations and people don't show up, we don't spend too much time sitting around. So we actually have a few minutes till the next hearing.
We can take a break.
One industrial way's on here for 7:40, but they're missing a few members of their team, so we'll jump back onto that one when they're all here. We could probably open Kinson Court and continue it, and then at 8:30 we can do Turning Leaf. I have one more piece of administrative. This is a certification of completion for 4 Heather Road, both local and state, 2 forms that need to be signed, and that one's all ready to go.
What about Blueberry Lane and Trestle Way, who are
They-
listed here?
They really shouldn't be on the agenda. I usually, Susan put them on the agenda because a request came in. I don't usually put them on the agenda till they're ready to be signed off on, because I don't want to clutter the agenda. One of them, they're both actually waiting on as-built, plans showing that the work was actually done as according to plan. So those 2 are just kind of in holding patterns, waiting on the applicant. So they'll be off the agenda for the next meeting.
What about the Open Space Committee? Do we have appointments for that?
I think we reappointed a couple people a few months ago. I think we're in good shape as far as the appointments on that. That's an interesting point. The open space plan is still ongoing, being updated. I need to check on that status with the consultants. So we can open Kinson Court and continue it since the applicant's 45 minutes not here.
Thank you.
It being on or after 7 o'clock, I'm going to open up a notice of intent, a continuation of 1 Kinson Court, GCC 2014-11, to level rear yard that involves decreasing the slope and height of a hill. 20 feet of material will be excavated
inches.
and regraded on site.
20 inches.
20 inches or
20
20
inches.
feet?
Well,
I think it's 20 inches on the.
Yeah,
It was 20 feet originally.
initially it was 20 feet.
that was a copy and paste from the previous application where it was 20 feet. Now it's down to 20 inches. Thank you.
What should it?
20 inches.
So,
I'm having some emailing and conversations with the applicant. They were a little short on the fee, so I probably could have not accepted the application, but I thought we would have resolved it before we got to this point. So I think they're $150 short on the fee. We're going back and forth. I thought they were gonna be here tonight to discuss it, but obviously that's not the
Any
case.
type of reason on short of the fee, estimate?
I think they kind of calculated originally. There was some confusion. They submitted 2 checks. We get 2 checks and the DEP gets 1.
Yeah.
They sent us 2, we cashed it. One of them turned out to be the one they should have sent to the DEP. So they just, I'll be honest, the fee schedule is confusing. I still get confused reading it. They didn't understand it. They were short. I'm not really sure. I can understand the confusion, but I've explained it to them, and I've typed out the fee schedule and what they pay, what they need to pay.
Put it to them in writing.
I've
what
emailed
they
it
owe.
twice.
Okay.
And again, there's only so much I can do. If they came
No
tonight,
harm,
we could do it
that's all,
again.
just to make
Yeah.
sure it goes.
But I was kind of hoping they'd come in tonight, just so we can say there's not much we can do, unless they request a waiver and say we'd like to not pay this fee. So for like town projects, we waive it.
That would be nice.
I don't see any reason, that's the only reason they could come in and try to ask the commission to waive it.
But there would need to be a reason for that.
Exactly. So, we're just looking to continue that to allow, I guess for them to pay the fee or request a waiver to it.
It's open. Mr. Chairman, make a motion. Continue. 1 Kinston Court, GCC 2014-11, DEP 161079, to
August 14th,
August 14th,
7:45.
7:45.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion been seconded to continue the notice of intent for 1 Kinston Court to August 14th at 7:45 PM. Is there any further discussion?
I do have a question, sorry. Are
No?
you keeping an eye on it? They're not thinking that they can go ahead and do that?
I have to admit, I haven't been out there for over a week.
Well, I
I'll
think
do
I
a
would-
drive by Monday.
I would think in any email correspondence, I would make it very clear to them that, you make them aware that they cannot proceed to do anything until,
That could be a sad miscommunication.
You got it. The actual project is it's a fairly simple, easily approvable project. It would have been approved the first night if there wasn't.
nothing with
any
this
issues.
site has been simple since the house was built.
Well, I don't want them to think that that was a done deal when we talked to them last time and they don't get that they need the rest of the
No,
paperwork.
that's fair.
Yeah, a little prevention,
Yeah, uh-huh.
as opposed to trying to address it after the fact. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Thank you. All right, that's done. That's done. Moved on.
So we're waiting on Industrial Way. We can't start turning leaf or the highway project till after 8:30.
So we'll take a break.
What about the DOT? Is that something we can?
It's time specific, 8:40.
Yeah, we
You
can't,
Oh.
we can open it after the time, but never before, because someone may not, show up and they
point,
miss.
yeah.
We
miss
tend to
hearings.
open a lot of things after the fact.
Shall I ask
Yes, please.
our chaps?
Carl, do you want us to tell them we'll take a 10-minute break?
Due to scheduling, we're going to take a 10-minute recess, and we'll reconvene in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me at that candy.
There's figures tonight. The last times I was here was packed.
Good evening. You're back with the Georgetown Conservation Commission,
It was.
and we're going to open another hearing, and that is being on or after 7:40 PM. I'm going to open up a notice of intent for One Industrial Way, GCC 2014-12. It's a waiver request for wetlands filling, and if I could have the applicant or consultant, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Name is Stephen Caruso.
Paul Marchand of Marchand Associates.
Thank you.
If I may just give a brief kind of
Give us an
overview of
overview
new
where
information
we
since
stand.
the last meeting. We found a file on this, actually, with the zoning board of appeals, and what we came across was a 1996 notice of intent and order of conditions that was issued to this property. So we knew there was an outstanding issue, we just weren't able to find it. We're trying to work towards kind of some resolution on this. That order of condition did show up, and it showed a fairly defined limit of work area that,
And who filed that application?
the signature is Mr. Stephen Caruso, 31196 is the notice of intent application.
Somebody signed it. That's actually not my signature, but.
Somebody
Some-
forged the
No,
signature?
no, they didn't,
No,
no, no,
they
no, no, they didn't
initialed it.
forge. It's probably the engineer or somebody signed it and initialed it, but I knew about it.
I think at the last hearing, you said it was done by all this work was done by somebody else 20 years
It
ago.
was 87, it was worked on in the 80s, before he bought the property. That's what we're talking about. This is something that,
Yeah, this is,
In the late
this is
80s.
actually when I built a facility there.
So we did do a site walk last week. Nick and Laura attended. We have some pictures from that, just kind of giving you an idea that I can pass around that Laura took. Kind of giving you an idea of the rock wall that was the portion of the discussion at the last meetings. To be honest, given the new information, if I knew this earlier on, I probably would not have accepted the notice of intent originally, because typically you can't have two applications out at the same time. They have an open, active order of conditions from a number of years ago. If I had known that ahead of time, I would not have opened this, because they really need to comply with the original application. And if they can't comply with the original order, then there has to be a discussion around that of how to get compliance or where to go from there. You typically don't.
Don't have two open.
Don't have two
On the same
open.
property,
So
same issue.
we can get into more of the specifics, which I think is important, so that the commission understand the specifics of the project and the applicant can kind of speak to the differences and why the changes or why the differences. But the bottom line recommendations are that I believe the commission should, or the applicant withdraw from this application, or the commission can deny it, because we've done that before where you have two applications. You really should deny it or have one withdrawn, so that you can close out, because there's mechanisms for closing out the old ones, there's discussions, there's enforcements. This is a new
COCs.
notice of intent, a COC discussion. A new notice of intent is not the proper mechanism for closing out an old one.
Correct. And if there are violations, enforcement order is the mechanism to deal with that.
And we do have wetland filling, and again, there's discussions about how long ago and who, but it has been documented that this did occur on the property. So, I think the commission should more go the enforcement route. You can meet in the middle, you can discuss it, there's a lot of options, but the enforcement order is really the mechanism to proceed in this project, in my opinion.
At the last hearing, sir, you kind of implied that, you weren't involved in some of this stuff done before. You didn't indicate that there was an open order on this property.
That it was almost 20 years ago, and that I was here for, and if it probably shows, if you found that file, that I was here for probably an hour, got my permit, and built, and I built out my facility, and that's what I did. I didn't, it wasn't a huge thing. I just, I did it, and I went to work, and I worked out of there for all these years, and, not thinking that I had to close this,
But it
thing out.
appears you didn't meet the requirements of that original order to begin with. You went beyond scope.
I don't know if I went beyond scope, is what I did is I just didn't finish it, or I put up the silt fences, and we went to work there, and we worked out of there for all these years.
But
And I just also want to mention that when we did the research, the registry of deeds, we didn't find that lot of cases because it wasn't recorded, so I didn't know.
Well, it's up to the applicant to do
No,
that.
I know
If you
that.
purposely don't do that,
Just-
then it's not there.
I understand, but just to answer your question, I was unaware of that until Steve called us 2 days ago to meet with him, and he found it in the file, so.
So what was the original, notice of intent for?
So I just heard that they were kind of in the process of working on it. I see it as they extended the limit of work by significant amount, so,
What would that be?
I mean, I can show you the plan.
So what was the original order for?
For a proposed building and some piles of sand on one side, the limit of work did not encroach to any of the back area where the wall is, where the stockpile of material is, where all the grinding, all of that was shown to be not touched, no activity whatsoever.
What was it then? Woods?
The presumption, so this is where it gets a little strange. The presumption on this plan is that it's natural, right? If the limit of work is here, beyond that point, the presumption is it's natural. When you look at a lot of the older pictures, it's obviously,
wasn't.
there's some activity that was done back there. But if they're not showing it here, and the zoning board does not have them authorized to do any work there, then there's the presumption that it would just go back to natural because it's not being used, not being touched. So the plan, to me, looks like it should be fully wooded. You go back and look at the pictures from the time frame that this was done, and it was cleared. You can't tell to the inch. I still think some expansion has happened over the years, but it's minor. But they didn't have approvals to do any work back there from a conservation and from a site plan design through the zoning board. So I think it's not a correct statement to say that this has been a work in progress, because order conditions can extend for a while when the work's in progress. All of the work, if it was in progress, was encroaching in areas they weren't supposed to. So I don't know if that's a really fair way of looking at it, that this was a work in progress type of a situation.
How would you say it's a work in progress if
Steve, can I-
you had to know about the order?
Can I, because I remember when we built the building now, this is a long time ago, and I remember we put up, when I say working on it, we put up the silt, the silt fences, and we went in there and we went to work. I mean, that's really the extent, and and I think that we paved whatever we had, whatever showed on there. And that's the extent of what, that we did, but I can show you pictures and you can look up pictures, that was always clear. The guy that we bought it from it was even more clear than what it is. I let all these trees grow in, he was gonna build like 3 buildings down here. I don't know, Balkan,
Yeah, I just
all
wanted
the
to
stuff that
point-
we
I
found.
just want to point to one thing, Steve, that you said. I understand what you're saying about the limit of work on the plan. I can see what you're talking about, where the contours meet the existing contours, but it's not fair to say that this was to be wooded, what's outside there, because we have photographs going that predate this plan by almost a year that show this whole site being cleared and,
Yep.
Google Earth. So, I mean, it's just whoever drew, I didn't draw this plan. It's not my plans. I'm not the engineer who did it, but the engineer who drew it, just,
Yeah, but
he
Doc-
showed
but
grading,
this-
doesn't mean it wasn't cleared. and there
This
wasn't any
very
trees there.
clearly shows kind of,
Matter of fact, the tree line, if I can mention this, the tree line actually is way over here in the corner. This shows it wasn't treed, it was all cleared.
it shows the tree line on one edge. It doesn't show tree lines anywhere else, so you can't use that as evidence for what was and what wasn't
Now,
supposed to be
is there
cleared.
anything about a block wall in this plan?
No, there's not supposed to be any activity. This plan, for the most part, has no activity within a 100-foot buffer. There is some encroachment on a 100-foot buffer on one side, but no encroachment. On the side with the major stockpiles and the rock walls, the retaining walls, this plan shows no activity at all within the 100-foot buffer. So you could make the argument that some of this area hypothetically could have been used, but none of the permits specify that. None of them with any other department, building department, zoning board, planning board, Concom. The plans, and again, no one here wrote these, but we do know how to interpret them. Solid line means proposed, dotted means existing. This shows no solid lines, no encroachment of grading or any activity. There's a presumption that you're not proposing any work over there. And
So this was to build your building
Right,
and put in the parking lot
right.
and those paved areas that,
Right.
that precede the area that we were actually going to look at. Is it possible that at that time, the phrase limit of work meant you can build what you're building, but don't go past this line. We don't want you messing past this
Yeah.
line for this project.
they didn't have.
And
those
it could be
definitions.
that it was already, I mean, it seems obvious that it was already cleared, but they were just communicating that, you can build your building, et cetera, but don't go past this line, because that's where the wetlands start to encroach.
The only aspect that I would disagree, a different aspect to look at that is this doesn't really show what the pictures show. This just shows existing grades out in that direction, wetlands and everything else, 100-foot buffer. This does not show what is actively cleared.
Right.
So for that reason, that argument to me it's confusing, because if this is showing kind of new activity in area that's existingly already disturbed that they can continue to use, this doesn't demarcate the area that they can continue to use that's disturbed. It just doesn't mention it. It doesn't exist.
Because it wasn't part of their project.
Correct.
That's what I'm wondering.
And I
That
agree.
that
It wasn't
whoever
shown for
drove
that
those
reason.
plans said,
That's
look,
what I
we're
put in.
working over here,
Yeah.
don't go over there.
Yeah.
And that's why there's no detail over in this part of the plan. But we do have photographs that show that it was already disturbed and looked
Yep.
kind of the way it does now.
Correct, similar.
Okay.
And again, the aerial pictures from back then and now, you can look at it and the same person or 8 people can look at it and
So-
see 8 different things.
Mr. Caruso, did you apply for this notice of intent?
Yes.
You submitted it, and why?
To build this building.
It's, to build this facility.
So you knew at that point, when you were building that facility, that there were wetlands and you had to be careful of them and come file?
But in the last meeting, it
Yeah.
appeared, until we uncovered the plan, you folks weren't even aware of this. That's
No,
what
I
it
was
appears.
aware there was there was wetlands there.
But it appears that you were unaware that there was an open order of conditions.
Oh,
on
I
the front.
didn't remember that there was. I mean, it was like, that when I got the permit to build this, and it probably shows in there, I was in this town hall for like an hour. We walked in, we got the permit, we built this facility, and we went to work. When you're running a small company, there's a lot of hats I have to wear. Should have I said, geez, what else should we do? Of course I should have. Is that a mistake? Yes. I mean, I just wanna, I wanna work together. I mean, there's one thing that I learned, I'm running my company for 30 years. If you work together, we can solve a problem. This is a problem, and I know if I created it, I didn't create it, I don't even wanna, I just wanna solve it. I wanna do it as quick as I can. And, that I should have probably shown trucks parked here, because I didn't think we had to do that. Should I ever, because it was clear, I ever had the guy draw some trucks in there? Yeah.
Well, you could define it as a problem. I might define it as a violation of the law, but
I mean, it's a very large stormwater infiltration area that is fairly well defined, that is roughly where they park their trucks, and half of it's where they stockpile material that was never constructed. So the more when I look at this plan, I don't see what activities they have now were permitted through this plan. You have a stormwater area that's huge, that's right in the middle where they're stockpiling material. I don't see the person that drew this as interpreting it that area would continue to be used for something. I see it as this is kind of what the vision was at the time, and it spread out over time. That stormwater infiltration area is not there right now, and given the amount of soil and stockpiling, it probably should be, because of all the erosion and sediment coming out of those piles. They have a little riprap overflow that heads into the wetland finger that, in my opinion, was filled in. So if you look at the old plan, the approved plan from back then, and the current plan they proposed, they've acknowledged some wetland filling. And I'll be honest with you, the area that they showed is pretty accurate. Where they filled in is probably pretty accurate. There's a small finger that sticks out towards the stockpiled area that is not, that has disappeared on the next version that they did recently. So we are missing a good-sized wetland finger, and we're missing a big stormwater feature that really should still be there. Wetlands don't usually go away. They usually get bigger these days.
What do you mean by stormwater feature?
Well, you have a stormwater infiltration area that
So there
connects
was a
into that.
constructed and engineered stormwater retention,
Well, to
whatever, and it's gone.
To be fair about that, let's just look at that for a minute, because we're gonna talk about that. And they just showed, a couple of contours tying in. It wasn't really a constructed storm, but it was intended to be a low area where water would pond and infiltrate in the ground. And frankly, it may not be this exact area. That's exactly what happens today, Steve, in that site. I think the two commissioners and yourself that was at the site a few weeks ago would attest that the wetlands is, what's not filled for wetlands is pristine. It's a perfect wetland. It's very healthy. There's no cementation into the wetlands. There's no evidence of any degradation of the wetlands that's out there. It's a great wetlands. So the way the site is constructed today may not be exactly as on this plan, but it certainly is fulfilling the intent to protect the wetlands. The wetlands, what's left of the wetlands is protected today. I don't think anyone can dispute that.
I guess I'm a little concerned that, when we were out there talking to you and when you were in here last time, you were saying that you were completely unaware of the fact that that there were wetlands out there and that you needed to be careful of them, and now we discover you actually had an order, you filed because there were wetland issues on that site before, so you were aware.
That I always said, when we were out there, I said that I knew that they were here, but I didn't exactly know where they were. You know,
But you knew that you should
I
be
didn't know that-
careful of them, and that you should at least come and talk to us
You also
about that.
referenced, this wall kind of grew over the years, like somebody snuck in the night and put blocks there, and you just added them. Well, you must have put the blocks to begin with. I mean, you built the whole thing.
I have an email from the building inspector who said there was no wall there. These blocks, these placements, we don't have any pictures of it, but they don't have any pictures to counter this. So there's a presumption, the applicant there's a presumption that they have to prove. They're the ones that have to prove whether it was there or not. The building inspector sent me an email saying there was no wall there before that date.
Before
So
what date, Steve?
the date that he quoted in his memo saying that when the wall went up, when you guys built it to its full extent, he is presuming that that is the start of the wall. There was no wall there before that.
Well, that's absolutely incorrect.
Okay, then you can deal with that. We have a memo from the building inspector
You
that
were out there,
states
and I
that.
was out there back last fall.
I do-
Was that
there
our current building
It
inspector?
is. There was blocks. There were rocks. There was no retaining wall foundation. And I said this last meeting, and I'll continue to say it. When I first went out there, the first time I ever went out there, I had to jump between rocks, jump between boulders. A few of them were touching together. It was doing this. It was weaving all over the place. They can say that they just added blocks on top, but no rocks are there from the original project, and every rock out there is new. They're level, they're flat, they're straight. As far as anyone in this building is concerned, building department, highway, no matter what department, it's a new rock wall. They can say that there was blocks there, they just added up. There's not one rock from when it was before, and every rock boulder, each block is new.
I think
The
what
building
Steve-
inspector is presuming that to be a new wall. That's how he's defining it, and that's how I think the commission should define it, as a new wall.
Steve, you were trying to express, and if we didn't express it, we apologize, but there's been a barrier there for a long time. We call it a wall, call it a barrier, we're gonna call it. There's been a physical, structural barrier, whatever you wanna call it, was there for a long, long time, in different forms over the years, I'm sure, and it's been maintained over the years and straightened or whatever, but it's always been there, and the idea was that to make sure that machines didn't, go off the slope into the wetlands, or if there was a spill or something going to the wetlands, it stopped sedimentation from going to, there's always been something there for a long time, as the point was saying. It may not be exactly as it is today, because it's been maintained over the years, and he did recently, this
Yeah,
past spring.
But that activity is supposed to be
raise it up.
permitted. What you just described is supposed to be permitted, and before it went up, I told you very specifically, no more work on the site without going to the commission, and it was built. So, I'm just
But-
having a hard
But
time
Steve,
trying to
but
justify it as
But just to be
existing.
fair about it now, back in November, my first time on the site personally was in November of 2012.
Mm-hmm.
In November 2012, I saw blocks in there.
I admit there are blocks there.
And pretty neatly lined up. I can't say it's like exactly what it is, I think it is
Yeah.
right where it's there, I mean, if it's not, it's damn close. So to me, when I went there after the fall, this spring for the first time, and I said, Steve, so what'd you do? He said, well, I stacked, and to me, it looked like he just stacked blocks on top of what was there in November of 2012. That's when I was there the first time, when you and I first talked, back in the last fall. So, what we're saying relative to that is that the barrier, has been a barrier there for a number of years. I don't know how many years, if it's been 15 years or whatever, but it's been a long time. Steve can attest to that, 'cause I haven't been on, my first time on the site was November 2012. But from then to now, the only difference I saw in that wall, and that barrier, was it got higher.
Well, that's right. It doesn't appear to have had any approvals anywhere along the way until it grew from a little wall to a big wall.
I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that. I'm just trying to make it clear, make the record clear, that what he did between last fall and this spring was simply stack more blocks up. It made it a little straight, whatever. There was no digging, and there was no foundation put in, there was no concrete poured and that kind of stuff. It was just raised up. And that was in an attempt to satisfy butters' complaints about noise. That's what it's for.
I feel like we're at something of an impasse on,
Well,
in
no, I think we're just trying
regards
to, I
of
think we're trying
what
to
happened with
figure
the
out what
wall.
happened, and then
I know.
at
Well,
that
it doesn't
next
matter,
point, we
it's
have,
there.
we have to go back and
Not
make the
permitted.
determination whether
But-
we need to go back to this original order and work off of that. because I don't really wanna make that go away, it was never
But that,
resolved.
but the area that we're talking about is not on that plan. Am I right? It's off in the,
All of these
don't work
So
here,
all of
and there's
the-
no details, so we can't tell from that plan.
But we know there was no rock wall there, and we know there were no
But there
enormous
isn't any
piles of
detail in
dirt.
that part of that plan anyway.
There's no detail, there's plenty of detail for current conditions and what it's shown to be going forward in the future. What's not here is
So
any
you
proposed
consider
activity.
that plan shows in detail what was out there beyond the limit of work line?
Correct. You got topo, you have everything here. On these plans, they show the faded out of existing, and then they darken the lines for proposed. The whole area that we're talking about has no dark lines. To me, it has no proposed changes. And you can make the argument that it was a green that you could, drive a truck down there and park it overnight, because it was existingly cleared. It was open, there was no trees there. There, in my opinion, are no permits, no drawings, no marks on this saying that they could pile soil, they could build a retaining wall. So whether this wall was done 100 years or 10 years ago or last week, either way, it wasn't permitted.
So you're confident that because the wall is not on that plan, it's because there was no wall there?
Correct. And the one that's there right now is a few months
Okay.
old.
I agree that in 1996 it wasn't
Has
there.
has popped up since 96
Correct.
without any permitting whatsoever.
And I'd add all the piles of soil and the activity that are there were never permitted.
Which is quite a lot.
And the zoning board, the building inspector has a letter into them saying that this activity does not meet the original permit and they need to comply.
Right.
Either remove it and bring it to its conditions that it was permitted to be, or go through the process of getting approvals to put it there. So other departments are having the same issue,
Right, and now that,
interpreting it the same way.
now that I understand that you had a wetland filing before this one, and that you were aware that you were responsible for consulting with us about activities near wetlands, and then all of this activity took place, and you didn't come forward with it. So you were aware. After the construction of your office building, et cetera, you knew that
18
wetlands
years
were
ago
an
we filed.
issue, and that you needed to be careful of them, and you didn't.
You're down there and you're working every day. It's not that, it's nothing that I think about is, some of these, the areas maybe 10, it's probably 10 feet wide, or whatever it is, what we encroached on this, what was originally there. And maybe the guys, when they're down there loading trucks or dumping, it spills over or whatever. But it's not it wasn't an intentional thing that I'm gonna take this 10 feet of land and I'm not gonna go to the conservation, that I'm gonna hide down here. It's not, that wasn't my intent. If that's what happened, it wasn't my intent.
This is Chipping Island we're waiting for.
I'm sorry. No side of disrespect, I told my client I had a commitment in Danvers and I wasn't gonna be able to be here, so certainly not a reflection on the board.
We call Chip because Chip is an expert on environmental issues, and he's actually on the commission and, this was for a bunch of years, so.
Yeah, so I mean, that I thought if us guys sat in your seats, maybe we can talk the same language and get this thing settled or whatever, get this done.
I know that we keep, it appears to, and it keeps being said that it wasn't a whole lot of encroachment. But looking at the map that we have here, your site is placed right in between two brooks that feed larger areas, and it's a very sensitive area where you are. So here's your spot. We have Wheeler Brook here that comes, they're both perennial streams. We have Jackman Brook. This is that wetland that is all along that side of your area, and that's why it's a concern. Because you're not just in an area where it really, it's just a muddy puddle. You're in the middle of some really important waterways, and that's why it's an issue. And that's our job to protect. These flow down to the clam flats in Rowley. I mean, we're dealing with
So I mean,
potential
kinda have to
contamination
read this
for
thing.
waterways.
before we can look at this,
Right.
before we can look at this, we have to resolve this original one. We can't let that building there open.
Or do we
Right.
finish that, start the new NI,
You
or?
gotta close it out.
we're gonna close it out. You can't have two open on the same property, one
Correct,
just ignore
but I
it.
mean, you could,
But you, closing it out typically is like approving something. It really needs to be withdrawn, or, you know, the commission can deny it, because there's not, you can't approve it and
Well,
then
you
go
know
and
what?
ask them
Well,
to
we
turn it
can't
down.
deny
why?
it, it's already done.
Well, no, you can deny the current notice of intent.
No, sorry.
You can deny that to go
Right.
back and address and close out. You should never open two notice of intents, and I
No.
think that's a
Right.
fairly common concept, not to have two notice of intents open at the same time, two
For the
orders.
same property.
property.
Same project, same activity.
That order of conditions expired in 1999. There's,
So it's
Right.
no longer valid?
it's no longer valid, absolutely. I mean, we can't do any work out there, and it's over. I mean, that was good for a period of 3 years. Allowed activities to take place.
And then everything
Some took
after that?
place and some didn't.
Okay.
But as far as that order is concerned, that's expired. That's
So
off, that's
so
off the table.
with that argument, then it's a straight up enforcement order for the additional activities.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want to address in this notice of intent, is to take care of those activities that have been performed that weren't authorized in the 1996 order of conditions.
Have you read the notice of intent?
Yes.
It doesn't address any of that.
Well, what happened was that notice of intent was prepared before some of this new information. My understanding is before you gave information, before we received the DEP matter. So it clearly has to be modified in order to reflect what's going on out there. So,
I mean, that's
What's missing?
everything. They don't show any of the, if you look at the plan, it has to show everything, they have to acknowledge that it's new activity, draw it in as this is new activity, all the grading, all the stockpiling, it's permission
The
after the
wall,
fact.
the grading, the
It's permission after the
stockpiling.
fact. This application doesn't even acknowledge the wall is new, they're still trying to argue that the wall is not new. If that argument, if you wanna go that route, then you have to acknowledge that old plan was what was permitted and everything else is new, so then we need a new application for all of that activity. And right now, the DEP doesn't have that. The DEP has some restoration work. They don't know what was done. So you really need to refile a whole new application, complete, so the DEP can look at this holistically,
With
not,
complete information, including
not,
what was
not,
done.
yeah. So I mean, that is one way of handling this. We can use this as a means of compliance with the old order conditions. It's not clean, in my opinion. It's not the way it should be done, but you can go that route. But I wouldn't recommend it, because how do we close out the old one? Do we have to wait till this one's closed out in another 10 or 15 years and then issue 2 COCs? And it's not a very clean way of doing it. And
But if it's expired, do we need to
there
worry
is no,
about a
ex-
COC?
they're, they never really expired. That's one argument to
So
say.
we just
they-
need
they-
to close
They're
it.
good for 3 years.
They're
If they
absolutely-
don't request an extension, they can request an
They
extension
don't
for
have
3
to,
more years.
right now,
They just
there's
don't go
there's an
away.
automatic extension on new ones.
So there's 6 years with the extension, 3 years automatic, 3 with a request.
And does it just
And-
die
and
at
after
the
that
end of
point,
that time?
Yeah, it goes away, but their obligation doesn't. So yeah, that order's gone. They never requested a COC, they never registered it, they didn't do
Right.
anything right at that
Right.
end of it. So yes, technically it is gone, but the violations have gone on since then.
Oh, I
So,
understand
You know,
that.
it depends on what way you wanna look at it. I would
So
like
I'm
to close it out
curious what
first.
the DEP would say if they filed a complete new NOI detailing everything that's happened since 1996.
yeah.
What is it like within the DEP?
Well, they'll
The
be more
Wetland
concerned
Protection
about
Act.
they'll be more concerned about the wetland filling that had occurred.
Sure.
They'll be much more concerned about that. Well, right now, none of that's being acknowledged.
Because that's very close to the wetland. I mean, it's well within the DEP boundaries.
I mean, I haven't gone the DEP involved because I've been trying to work with the applicant to come to some closure on this. My next step is to bring it up to the DEP because I have a clear before and after picture. Wetland filling has occurred. The DEP should get involved in a
I
more
agree.
enforcement role.
I agree.
and I don't know what your before and after is. I know that we had a wetland consultant go out and determine where the line
That's the after.
is.
Yep, we have that.
Okay, and I don't know, what is your before then?
It was the original approved plan. So that 86 plan that was.
96?
Sorry, 96, thank you. The 96
building.
plan for the building and the grading. Your client has all that stuff. So
Yeah,
we
no,
can
no,
review
I'm
it later.
aware of that, but that's what they thought the wetland, I don't know how they drew that line back in 1996. I know the key is, and what Norse has done and can do, and I think you have peer review, somebody could look over their shoulders, is to determine with the alteration where the line would have been. I wouldn't use the Hancock line in 96, I would use whatever your current process is in order to determine where that line is, so then have
It's hard to determine,
DSC.
when you've buried a wetland for 10 or 15 years, it's not an ideal way to determine where it was. If we have an engineered drawing that shows how it was, and the applicant's rep said this is pretty close, it's pretty accurate, I think there's an assumption that the old plan is accurate until you can prove otherwise. So we have an old plan, it's similar, but it obviously points out there's a delta between the two. Last meeting, we approved hiring a third-party review to start reviewing this and try to understand what's going on out there. We discussed it on the phone and decided not to start that process till after tonight's meeting. But we have taken the steps to do that, and we'd love to bring someone else in to get that professional opinion in.
And it still may be premature, because based upon the information that I've seen, I just came onto this very lately. We would want to gather that information, go out in the field and present to you where we think that line actually is. If we have to update, I mean, we've given you a line.
You've already done that, though. You've done test pitting. If it's gonna change, it shouldn't much, because you came in and already said, here's where the line is today. I don't think you want to spend too much time reevaluating that unless you'd like to.
I think we need to look at that one more time. That would be my view, is that we would look at that.
I mean, that's all on the applicant.
I
If
guess-
you guys want to go and review it more, that's fine.
Yeah, of course that's on.
And just to be fair, Steve, my statement about this line looking pretty close was sitting at the table, and when you threw the plan out in
Yeah,
front of me, I'm looking at it.
we were
I
doing
looked-
a
I looked at-
superimposed-
Right, I looked at it close now, and there are sections of this line that's, very close to what Norse did. There are sections where they show wetlands further away than what Norse did.
Yep.
And there are sections where they don't show wetlands, where we show wetlands are.
But it's relatively, you guys didn't fill
pretty
in
close.
20
what you-
acres of wetlands. It's within.
No, I think it's,
But the-
what I see, it's less than 5,000 square feet. I didn't see any stress on vegetation when I walked out there. I think the irony may be that the barrier and the stormwater management measures that they use out there have prevented siltation into the wetlands. I think that that's fair to say, that it is a sensitive area, but when I walked down there, I didn't see any stress on the vegetation, so.
But there's also a presumption that any activity within the resources has a negative impact. It's a pretty sensitive area. The approved plans don't show any activity within 100 feet of it. What would be better for that wetland, a 100-foot buffer or 5 feet? It doesn't look horrible, there's no stress on the plants, but the approval plans at a 100-foot buffer in that area, no activity. Now we have a wall there. Just suggesting that it's healthy and fine.
And the wall's
doesn't
only
take
been
that
there a
away.
short time.
Well, but and the wall, though, performs a couple of functions there. That not only is it erosion control, but it also has, from a public safety and a noise basis, that's helpful to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
But it didn't go through the process. They didn't pull permits, and there's a process and a procedure, and
No,
I don't think we should be discussing the wall. I think we should be discussing how we want to take the
How do
whole
we
site.
change, how do we fix
How do we
what's
work
done?
from here to there? Because we get caught up on, did this wetland get filled? Where's this wall? Who did it when? The big picture, again, I have a third-party reviewer ready to start work on this to help evaluate, to bring this across. Do we want to close this and handle it as an enforcement, which is one very legitimate
Well,
option,
right,
or we can
we still
do
have an
both?
enforcement order open on this property.
Correct. So you can close it out and handle it straightly an enforcement order, or you can kind of move forward with this. But I'll be honest with you, they had to 100% resubmit this, because the DEP doesn't take versions and stuff
Well,
like that.
that's right. I mean,
So the real procedure should be to remove it 100%, start fresh, because this has no resemblance to what the next one should look like. So if we do want to handle notice of intent, I think it has to be another one. Because they didn't
Well-
pay the fees for anything in this. They paid the fees just for the mitigation, not for the wetland
So, I
filling
mean,
up.
in that
All-
case, you could actually deny that, and because if they'd have to they could file, it'd have to be significantly different, and it would have to be,
Correct.
then they could refile.
And that'd probably
Is
be
there
the
a
cleanest
waiting
mix.
period if it's denied?
There is, only if it's the same plan.
Right.
If it's significantly
3
different.
years if
Okay.
it's basically the same plan, but this would be
Okay.
significantly different.
Okay.
You can ask him, I don't know where the enforcement order is.
I'll give you guys a copy of it.
Somewhere.
I think that a lot has happened since the enforcement order was issued. The enforcement order was just a basic, hey, get in here and file a notice of intent. We need to find out what's going on. We really need to
We modified the
modify
enforcement
it.
order.
Yeah, we need to write up a new one, have the commission sign it, kind of, whatever direction we come up with today, I'll include that in the enforcement order. So we are running a little bit
Okay,
behind already.
so-
What's the?
What do you think is the neater way to do it? I do agree that the first, that the existing NOI needs to go away somehow.
Well,
do you
we
want
need
a
probably
new
beef-
one,
Probably need to
or
beef up the enforcement order and, you know, if
what's
they
the
don't.
best way to get the DEP involved?
Well, if you,
For an
if you
enforcement
withdraw-
order or an NOI?
Both,
The DEP's
both.
already.
Okay,
So the DEP's involved
They
on,
just issued they issued a number and issued a comment on the
comment.
file.
yeah, regarding a project that has no resemblance to what you actually should have filed for. So they commented, and they looked at
A little piece of it.
a little piece of it. So to get the DEP involved, it's have this withdrawn or deny it, refile, we'll file an enforcement order, and they can refile notice of intent. If they choose to file notice of intent, or we can handle it as an enforcement order, and the DEP's notification will be this more detailed enforcement order, kind of stating conditions of how to proceed.
I mean,
And
in
what
the
about
sense
the
that,
original OOC?
Again, it's dead, but you still need a COC on
Yeah,
it. You
it's
still need
supposed
to
to
close it
stall,
out.
yes.
You know, you can say that it's dead. So people do this all the time. If they want
Well,
to
they're
use
gonna
it,
sell the
it's
building.
good forever. But when they don't want to consider it, it's dead after 3 years. It's always in spirit active because you were supposed to do what you were supposed to do. Just because,
Completed.
yeah. So they still need a COC.
Right.
But they never registered the original one. So no banks, no lawyers are going to say, oh, you need a COC. Technically, they should register the original order of conditions tomorrow
Right.
because they never did. So that would be a condition in the enforcement
So,
order.
so the order of conditions is just an allowance, it allows you, it permits you to do work. It's not a mandate.
Nope.
And there are lots of orders of conditions that people don't do the work, and you can close it out with a certificate that says,
Yep.
I didn't do the
Yep,
work.
no work done,
Or you could
correct.
close it out with a partial certificate and say, I did A, B, and C, but I didn't do D,
that's
E, and
if
F.
we accept, if we close it out, we don't have to do that.
Well, if we ask for one, now it hasn't been placed on record, so he's correct, it's not one that would come up in a title
Agree.
exam. But if we did record it and then came back with a partial and said, we did A, B, and C, then that would be up to you to determine whether you issued a certificate.
That's correct,
And if
sir.
you didn't, you know, we could litigate that, but I think that would be part of the cleaning up the whole process.
I mean, the problem I see it is that they got a permit for A and B, and then they did C, D, and E. So if they filed for a partial and a COC, we catch it and say, well, no, you did more, you went beyond the scope of work, so.
but did they fulfill the original OOC? Is that complete?
And the answer is no.
Obviously, they went beyond it,
No,
but,
we didn't- we
okay,
didn't.
so it would be a partial.
We don't, you wouldn't do a partial because there's a violation, you went beyond, you'd write an enforcement order because they have an open order of conditions that they went beyond and created violations as
So
such.
you could handle it either, I agree, you could handle it either under an enforcement order where we did the work, or you could do it under an order of conditions, which is an after-the-fact order of conditions that took care of those
A
items.
subsequent order of conditions.
Subsequent, I call it after the fact.
Permission
right,
after the,
subsequent.
ask for permission.
Enforcement order is our mechanism
Ask
for
for
corrective
Okay.
action.
Yes, you.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I don't think we disagree on that.
And I think it makes just as much sense to deny this NOI
Or they can withdraw it.
or withdraw it. I mean, it doesn't really make a
Yeah.
lot of difference,
No.
because they have to significantly change it, and if, even if we deny it, because they're gonna change it, it does not affect their ability to refile it,
Correct.
because it is gonna be different, and we would make a vote to accept that new NOI.
Correct.
Because it would
As
be different. And still have the EO open, and you can have those two concurrently open, an EO and the new notice of intent at the same time,
That's how we typically do it.
Yep.
until you have the full corrective action.
How do you feel about that?
Well, my advice to my client would be not to withdraw the notice of intent until I knew what was in the enforcement order. Because that could be handled with a modification of a notice of intent. If I need to pay fees,
I
I'll
don't
pay the
believe they-
I think we
They-
actually
they
had,
pay.
we did not
They didn't pay,
take,
right?
we did not take off the fines, but we haven't.
You haven't closed it out.
We haven't closed it up.
So my original
We
EO,
we modified it to
modified it.
allow him to continue work
Mhm.
as long as he did not do any egregious further damage
Correct.
to the resource area.
Yep.
Your initial one said no work at all.
correct,
So we did modify that.
Correct.
Ratified and voted, to allow him to
Work.
continue work
Yep.
in his business, with those stipulations.
So if they're not really willing to withdraw, again, it really doesn't matter what the enforcement order says, it says what it says.
Right.
That's the process. We're open hearing tonight, we have abutters that probably want to comment on this. You know, whatever the path is, I think we need to close it out, and if they're not willing to withdraw, then
I
I
think we should
recommend just denying it,
deny it and just
you know,
let,
and move on with an enforcement order.
Utilize the EO until they refile.
With the
And-
new NOI?
Correct. And again, the butters do not, just for the record, the butters do not get notified through enforcement order actions. So if that is the route we go and they do not file a notice of intent just keep in touch with my office, and I can let you know when the meetings are and the times and things like that.
So I do want to open it up to a butter we're getting late, and I do want to open it up to a butter comment, but before I do that, any other comments from commissioners on this? Are there any abutters for One Industrial Way who would like to make any comments? If you would, please identify yourself for the record. Sir?
John Hitterberry, 12 Hickory Lane. I'm not an environmental engineer, and a lot of this is sometimes confusing to me. Notice of intent, OOCs, et cetera. I know we've got to live by the bylaws, the regulations, and I have a body of water on my land, butting the Shuttleworths here, and I know we've got a no-cut policy. Half of my property is, I used to call it conservation land. Stephen informed me it's called water resources. I've got an acre, I live on half of it. And I understand that's one of the reasons we moved there, because we've got the woods. And when I've been here 30 years, almost 30 years, 15 of it in Hickory Lane. And 13 years at Hickory Lane have been wonderful. The last 2, not so much. I'm glad that the Conservation Commission took an interest in it, because I was not completely aware of any of the violations that have come forward. But there's a few questions. You mind if I sit?
Please do.
I had a question on, especially last week, and the deluge of the last 2 days and July 4th. Does that precipitation affect the, I call it the mountain range of product? Does that percolate into the wetlands? Can it? I mean,
Okay.
Certainly.
There's no stormwater features designed to capture it and treat it. The previous plan showed some area to capture it. They claim that it's naturally happening. There's no real engineering in the field designed to capture it, so the assumption is it's flowing directly into the resources untreated. Yes.
Just for the record though, Steve, let's be fair about it. I mean, you were out there yourself and you saw the wetlands there. Did you see any problems with that wetlands? Any stress on the vegetation or any siltation taking place?
I see wetland filling. So,
That's not- wasn't my question.
I have seen some stresses, yes, there's wetland
Yeah.
filling, the edges changed, the edges moved. So if there was stresses that were going on 10 years ago and the edge was filled in, there was a wetland finger that was out much further. I think it's hard to assess stress when the edge has been so disturbed so recently.
Just
So
I
because we don't
think
have,
it's an
just
opinion.
because we don't have an
actually,
area
rather
that
than
says.
stress, I think the concern may well be contamination, which we
Have you
might
done
not
any- have you
see.
done any sampling?
Which we might not see evidence of. If I'm struggling to remember what kind of product you had out there, and that's a valid concern. What kind of contamination may be coming off of that and flowing into the wetlands? So I consider that a legitimate question. It did not look as though there was a sedimentation problem, partly because of your wall. But other kinds of contamination could definitely be an issue.
What specifically is the product now, the various kinds of product that you have?
There are 3 products. There's concrete that, that we crush. There's brick, and there's and there's asphalt. So those are the 3 products we have. And there's nothing near the wall or near the wetlands. It's all on the other side of the yard, probably 100 feet away from that wall. There's nothing near that, there's nothing near that, that would go in the ground and flow over there.
The Department of Environmental Protection considers this to be a recycling facility, and they don't require that there's any treatment of that material. So we're in compliance with those requirements.
That's interesting.
But it's certainly not best
for
management
asphalt.
practice in terms of stormwater.
Yeah, they,
Well, it's interesting, I mean, because it's so sandy out there, I mean, if we had a clay and we had some problems with percolation and then the material was flowing off to the wetland, then I would agree with you. But I think one of the reasons they didn't build a stormwater basin was they never had that problem. I mean, if they're operating in and out of there, they wanna have a basin so that they can operate and they don't have puddles of water. And it doesn't.
So it's leaching into the ground, so you get water quality concerns then. It might not, if you
That's
have.
normal infiltration, that's what you want, is water into the ground.
But by design, not kind of just, there's some monster piles out there. There's no real stormwater plan. there's no engineering behind this. We got piles, wetlands are over there. There's a presumption because it's 80 feet, there's no damage being done. That's not how stormwater works. You typically design it according to
Steve,
the
you
land.
design a plan with the intention of treating the stormwater so there won't be any adverse impacts on the wetlands. Now we have kind of the proof in the pudding. This has been there, it's been in operation for, how many years, Steve, you've been doing this stuff? I don't know.
I mean, you know, I've been here for
For
almost
years and
20
years and years
but-
and years, and it's working. I mean, if it's not broken, I mean, why you wanna fix
Well,
it?
you've
But
never
none
done
of this-
never done any sampling out there.
What kind of sampling are you-
Suspended
what is it
solids, total suspended solids?
Water
Never heard
quality.
of those?
We could do that, we got a meter.
But also
We
keep
don't
in
have any
mind,
discharge. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not like a subdivision where you put the water into a detention basin, or a forebay first, then into a detention basin, and then you've got an outlet that goes off towards the wetland.
this shows on the
You don't-
original plan. That's exactly what it shows.
Yeah, and I'm
Right,
not sure why
exactly.
they didn't build it. I assume it's because they saw they didn't need it, because they don't have any direct discharge for purposes of making that measurement. Everything infiltrates into the ground.
But none of the piles were permitted, none of the activity was permitted. The zoning board is concerned because it was never meant to be recycling. It was never permitted to be that. You know, I think it's just looked at holistically for the actual activity.
So these are all outstanding questions.
I think this was actually.
Can't resolve now, we
No.
just need more information.
And we come here, even though it may seem as if this is confrontational, we filed a notice of intent to address the enforcement order. We now have new information with respect to where that fill is that we want to address and come back and sit with you. I mean, one thing that tonight I was going to say to start off, we don't want to close this hearing. We came here, and one of the things we considered was continuing it, but we didn't want to do that. We thought we should have a discussion so we can put these items on the table.
So, I mean, yeah, we would like to move forward, and I think we're trying to decide that, number one, what the issues are, and also the mechanism to move forward here.
Because it's getting late.
So we also had a butter, so that was a side note on an abutter comment that I don't believe he finished. Did you finish your questions?
I actually had a question.
You can identify yourself?
Dana Shuttleworth, 13 Hickory Lane. My question was, on the notice of intent, the narrative, there's no remarks about their new business, the ABC recycling plant. And I was wondering why that's not part of the notice of intent.
It will be on the next version. That's
Okay.
part of the discussion tonight, how
All right.
it's so limited on what was missing from the previous notice of intent. This discussion is pretty much saying the next one or the next enforcement will include all of the activities, not just, the notice of intent they originally applied for was kind of their area that they felt was what we wanted to discuss. So that's why it was written up that way. They intentionally did not put everything else in because they didn't think we'd be discussing, they felt it was outside of the scope of the commission.
But I will say that the Conservation Commission does not regulate uses. You regulate activities.
In our jurisdiction.
And land activities. The ABC is not a Conservation Commission use, that's the DEP and that's the Zoning Board of Appeals. You don't regulate.
As
We're
part of-
not gonna come in and ask permission, I wouldn't have had that in there, because we're not gonna ask permission from the commissions. I don't ask permission to have a single-family house, I
No, but
ask
we might-
permission to build a house.
For an industrial perspective, we might ask what kinds of materials you use and what proximity of those materials are, the
Absolutely.
resources, et cetera, what the
That's
potential
impacting
is.
the groundwater.
Regulate, for instance, there are no hazardous wastes that are authorized in those, yes, that, absolutely, that's within your
I
jurisdiction.
certainly would ask if you had petroleums, whether you had an SPCC plan and all those kinds of things, proximity, releases, all that kind of stuff.
We'll do a SWIP, yeah, absolutely, but I don't want the abutters to think that we're gonna file a notice of intent and ask permission to conduct that work, that's all.
Yeah,
That'll
and
be
that's-
before the planning board. My understanding is you need to
Right.
file with the planning board
That's
to
a
get those
separate-
approvals. So
separate
you
issue.
can address that type of stuff with the planning board. It should be happening shortly.
What do we need to do?
So I think what we need to do is see if we need to make any modifications of the EO, and then we need to make a vote on this NOI and to give them time to refile.
Do we need to decide what we want on the EO?
Well, I don't know what I'd write the EO. I mean, typically how this works is you write an enforcement order ordering them construct according to plan. That kind of sets in time what they need to do, and it gives them a timeline. If they want to go and file a notice of intent to keep it and to ask for permission after the fact, then
Right.
And we can
the
modify
EO
it
is the
you know,
right place,
anytime.
and then you can modify it, you can forgive the fines, but typically what you do from a legal standpoint is you issue the EO with fines, $300 per day,
Just leave them until
to
you,
return it to the previous conditions.
and then you can,
And then you can always go back
withdraw
later
them
and
if, you
forgive
know,
the
as
fines.
I mean, it's a mechanism to move things forward,
Yep.
and otherwise,
And if they choose to
You may
turn it
not.
back to its previous condition, or maybe there's someplace in between, say it's meeting in the middle, which is where I'm hoping this will end, is not leaving exactly what's there, but pulling everything back to maybe the 75-foot buffer. You know, something like that might be able to be worked out.
Well, I
What
would
I-
ask if you could reconsider, if we could have 30 days to come back with you with a plan that addresses all of these items that have come up in this particular notice of intent.
I mean, that's not the right mechanism for closing out an order of condition that was never done properly. It's kind of ignoring the EO, the enforcement, and the going beyond. I mean, we can agree to disagree, but
Yeah, I'm not talking about 1996.
Mhm.
That's a separate matter, and that's irrelevant to what's taking
so
place.
you're
out
talking
there.
about 30 days to refile with us?
No, we have a notice of intent that asks permission
But
to
well, our concern is,
store and replicate an
right,
area.
I understand that. The concern is what, the DEP doesn't have all the complete information and you wanna modify this, they're not gonna necessarily look at it again.
Yeah, anything that we submit to you, we have to copy the department on. So they should have a file that would have everything that is in front of you. The rules are, anything that we submit to the Conservation Commission also has to go to the department. I just hate to push that one aside, given the information we provided and some of the topo, when we can add to it. I don't think it's deficient in terms of what's there now. It just needs to be added.
I still wouldn't recommend it. I mean,
You
This
think it'll
is-
slip through the E DEP?
it's not gonna get a full review. I mean, you have to literally rewrite everything. Why just, why take that document and pretty much throw it out the window and start over and call it the same document?
Can't they withdraw without prejudice or whatever, and then refile?
And that's the cleanest way to do it. That way to your point, it puts all of the confusion back away and brings it back to, okay, what are we really discussing? Start fresh, discuss.
This is what
If
we're
you
asking.
deny this, I could appeal it and just take it away from you and just go up to DEP and just handle it up there. That's what
On
I
a
could
state
do.
level, you are correct.
Right.
You wanna go to Superior Court, it'll take 2 years to get out and we'll win, because we've been to court, I think, 10 times and won every time. On a local bylaw, the commission is 100% within their rights to deny it based on the
Yeah.
facts.
So you can deny whatever you'd like under.
Yeah, just the DEP always overturns. For this type of activity, all you filed for is replicating wetlands. You didn't acknowledge that you filled wetlands in. So of course the DEP, on the merits of this project, are gonna let it go through. It doesn't really have much relevance to this discussion.
It doesn't behoove you to take this to court either. I mean, if you wanna bring this to fruition, I mean, I'm trying to find a mechanism to get you folks to provide all the information so we can move forward. You can either withdraw that, or, I mean, we could deny it. I mean, take whatever your pleasure is.
What
If
are
I
the,
withdraw it, I'm just gonna come back with something that's similar to what I have here, and something I'm gonna add to it.
It's not similar at all. You're asking to replicate 400 feet of wetlands, pretty much.
So it's
other
over
plan-
2,000 square feet.
But you're talking about replicating one area versus encroaching on a very large area, no stormwater, a retaining wall, 2 retaining walls, or 1 retaining wall, 1 freestanding. I don't consider those similar at all. And typically that's withdraw and then reapply for significant differences. Usually you add more information when it's, we want to add 20 feet to the wall over here for minor changes. When you do significant ones, you don't typically reinvent the wheel.
did you miss the conversation, were you not here when we were saying that the NOI we were looking for was going to include all the work that had been done since 1996?
Yeah, well,
Since this was completed, the building, et cetera, so the NOI we're looking for is going to
Comprehensive.
include all the information since 1996.
I look at it a little differently. I consider what we would be doing is filing a notice of intent consistent with the enforcement order for that work that took place that was not authorized, as opposed to what's here. So I would submit a different notice of intent to address your enforcement. Because that work that was done in 1996 was done when you didn't have a bylaw.
Right.
You didn't have any setbacks in 1996, so
We-
that
Sir,
works.
we did have a bylaw.
You had, excuse me, you
Did
did
not
have a
have
bylaw, but you didn't
regulations.
have regulations.
So
right.
we could
Right.
go back to the state 100 foot on anything.
You could, right, and that's what, and so that's what I would look to have those rules apply, rather than, I'm not looking to have activities that were built in 1996 apply to 2014 rules.
But we don't know when the work was done. That's
We've
part
got
of my problem.
aerials that show that, I mean, we all know that.
But we have no idea when the wall was, the wall by the building inspector's point was built a few months ago. The aerials show very, very crudely an area, a disturbed area. That was how it was X years ago, but all the piles of material were not. So I don't think you can look in an area and say, we're just applying for the wall. It's the whole area. Back then, were there how many hundreds of thousands of yards of material being stored within 100 feet of the buffer? That's all new activity that needs to go through the permitting process.
Well, in terms of to get the facts straight, as I understand it, the wall was extended up.
Yep.
But the wall had been installed
Yeah.
well prior
I
to.
think we've gone back and forth for
Right.
at least 2 hours over the past few months over the differences. I'm looking at a building inspector memo saying there was no wall there, period. Again, I think that can be discussed in the future, because we'll never see eye to eye on whether the wall existed or not. My opinion is it's a new wall. You disturb the soil, you put new blocks there, that's a new wall. Again, that will come out through the enforcement order or the notice.
So
of
really,
intent.
really all we want is a comprehensive notice of intent that includes everything. We just don't want a partial little piece and little with blinders on.
Or do it through an enforcement order, but.
I mean,
I-
we'll keep the enforcement order, but what we'd like is you to provide all the information. Simple. We're just trying to come up with a mechanism of doing that.
Right, but you understand my hesitation that if I file a notice of intent in 2014, I'm subjecting myself to the rules and regulations of 2014 for activities that took place prior to the time when you
Yeah,
had
I
the
understand.
regulations. So that's why I'm separating out those activities that took place before under one notice of intent versus the other. Now, together they're comprehensive, but it may be two rather than
Well,
one.
I
think
mean,
most
sir,
of the-
sir, I was on the commission. I helped write those regulations. So before that, sometimes we would even be more stringent than the regulations.
In most of the
And we
act-
could.
Most of the activities
no,
that I'm concerned
You
about.
can be more stringent, not than the state regulation. We didn't have regulation. We could go right up to the state. Anything, we could put you down to 90 feet away from a resource area, because there wasn't a defined in a regulation. Go right to the bylaw.
You know that the case law says the only way you can enforce a setback is if you have it in the regulations, and that's an Andover case. So you can't say that we couldn't have the wall in
Well-
2014 based upon what you had in 1996.
Okay, but I think it's more of a legal question, maybe a third party can look into this. I agree with you on the stuff that was done 20 years ago, but a lot of this activity, how long have you been stockpiling material in this quantity in that area? You can't say this is all old activity and you can't talk about it, because a lot of these activities are new.
When is it old?
So there's a
When is it
smaller
new?
retaining wall in the front that they acknowledged they built a month ago. You know, we need to look at it under the current regulations, and if there's some of the activity that they can prove were done before, then yes. If it was done 20 years ago, we go by what was in place 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The disturbed area is fairly well defined, but the site plan doesn't show any proposed improvements, any activity. So that wall, again, was not built, it was not permitted. It doesn't matter if we had regulations or not. At the time, they didn't show it, so it was put in without a permit. Even if it was just by the bylaw, it was put in without a permit, thus it's an illegal wall and should not be there right now. They need to ask for waivers. The fact that we didn't have regulations when it was built doesn't really matter, because they never went through the proper channels. From a regulatory standpoint, it is a new wall, whether it was built 10 days ago or 10 years ago.
I'm not contesting that. I'm contesting what standards you used to review the wall in 2014. Whether it's your standards that are in existence now or the standards that were in existence previously, which were different performance standards. I'm not suggesting to you that wall is legal because it was built in 1996.
Okay.
I don't want you to go away thinking that that's what I'm stating. I'm looking at how you regulate that. What are the performance standards? And they're
Without the
different.
regulation, the commission was using the bylaw, and which was, by definition, a bylaw has to be more stringent than the state act. So we were using the bylaw. The commission would make a call based on what it felt, what the risk was to the environment at the time. So the setback might be more, it might be less. The regulation was to more clearly define the bylaw, as I'm sure you're aware.
Well, this wall is so close to the wetland I don't see, I think we're splitting hairs by trying to determine when it went in and whether the bylaw was there or not.
Well,
From what I can see and what I saw, it is significantly close to the wetland. It is well within the DEP's buffer zone, and they are responsible for it just as we are. I don't really mind when it went in. It's regardless of when it went in 1997 or 3 months ago, it's still massively close to a resource area that would have been protected by the Wetlands Protection Act anyway. So whether, and I do understand your concern
But I
about
agree
being
with your
held.
point. I agree with your point. I agree with
So
your point.
I think that we need to come up with some mechanism whereby, because I think it will help you to get this in front of the DEP, because it's possible that there are benefits to what you've done. You are potentially protecting this resource area from sedimentation and perhaps from contamination, given what you've done. I think that you should give the DEP a chance to weigh in on that. And so we need their help to disentangle it as well. So I would like us to find a mechanism
I
to
mean,
get it before the
We're not
DEP
talking
in
about,
its
we're
fullest
not talking
form.
about denying it so you can't go
Right,
move forward.
It's a
We want
mechanism.
it as a mechanism, so you put a filing before us in the DEP that has everything you're gonna do or wanna do. Not so we're trying to shut the whole operation down. I could do that via the EO. We haven't done that. We actually pulled the EO back to allow you to continue to work. So we're trying to work with you. We just want a mechanism, a filing mechanism where we get everything and it gets evaluated properly, so we can move it forward.
so we know what waivers are there, and we know what potentially the benefits are for granting those waivers too. And the DEP can have their point of view on that kind of waiver as well.
And as you know, even if we denied it and you refiled it, we have to accept that new NOI within the 3 years, and we're willing to do that.
But this NOI was also for replication that we also agreed we did not think was appropriate. So we agreed that in the field, didn't we?
Yeah, we looked at it, when I talked to Steve about it, when I put the plan together, we were trying to get a 2-for-1 replication area. So
Right.
to get that area, I had to go somewhere.
Exactly.
So we did our very best to try to minimize disturbing good land, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But when you looked in the field, in terms of, the vitality of the wetlands and the condition of the wetlands,
Mm-hmm.
and the conditions of the buffer zone, it was like, why are we doing that? So
Yeah.
is there a better way, better way
Exactly.
of skinning the cat here? And
So I think that we should go back to scratch and just start focusing on,
So-
what's there
Yeah.
and what waivers are required and what are we gonna do?
We simply
Because
come
there
back to
are
the-
benefits to the abutters for the wall, the noise level, et cetera.
We're getting late in time, so we simply come back to the same issue. There's two options. We either
Yes,
withdraw
exactly.
Or we can deny. I mean.
So what would be the more effective? What would be more effective? You all know. What would we
There's
have
really-
more, what would
They have
get
to-
us better attention from the
get-
DEP?
You get the exact same place either
It's almost
way.
6 of one, half a dozen
One
of
of the
the other.
options, they can appeal, the other option, they can't.
I feel like I don't know what's involved in managing an EO. But I do know what's involved in managing an NOI.
Either
So if-
way, the notice of intent, I'm gonna issue an EO Monday. They can file notice of intent or not. The path at that point is what it is.
The EO was
Which
like
are you
a
more
back, the EO
comfortable
was
with?
the EO was like a backup, because we
Okay.
can always fall back
But
on
they
it.
don't
So
have to
would you
file notice of
prefer
intent.
a new NOI?
Can I ask you, you would rather have us, just to withdraw it? Is that would be the best thing to do? I don't.
From my
I'm
perspective, it
confused.
really doesn't matter, because the end result will be the same. We want to get data, the whole package in, so we
Yeah.
can really evaluate it, and so can DEP. The end result will be the same.
So if we withdrew it and got credit for our fees because we haven't used anything, would that be
The fees you
acceptable?
paid were for the wetland replication area. I think that would be reasonable, because we really haven't gotten
Yeah,
into those details.
exactly.
And the additional
We
fees
might
would be
be
for the
willing to-
additional
There's
activities.
more fees, we'll just get credit for what we've paid so far.
Yes.
And
Just back
that
them
that would be us being nice, because again, this is an EO issue.
Well, then we would ask
wanna be
that
nice
the,
too.
Can
we
I ask-
would
Sorry, what?
withdraw
We wanna
something.
be nice also.
Go ahead.
Can I ask
Oh, good.
something? What about the fines? If we work together, am I still clocking?
Well, we would leave them in place until, again, it's a backup insurance policy for us to ensure that it gets done. So
I'm
it
gonna
doesn't
do
get
it.
forgotten.
If I say I'm gonna do something, I'll do this thing.
We
Can
would-
we
we
hold
would-
them in abeyance in case?
Well, that's what we do. We would then, at the
So
end,
we're
at
not
the end of the project,
collecting them.
we would vote
Okay,
we would vote to alleviate the fines at the end of the project. It's a mechanism just to make sure things
Right.
move forward.
Mr. Caruso, we hold you hostage with the fines. You're not actually paying them every day. But if you don't do what you say you're going to do, that's when we come after you for the fines. So you're looking at like you're going to be handing us
Yeah, 'cause I've been throwing up
dollar
every
bills
day.
every day, I'm
DEP
sure.
won't do that. DEP will say, give me a check.
Well, they still could. The DEP's not really aware of what's going on. Once this notice gets sent in, they'll become aware of the situation. And again, I encourage the applicant to write up this notice of intent for what has happened on the property and what is there. Because if they don't, again,
Piecemealing.
it has to show everything realistically what has happened since the original order was issued.
So I
If they
believe,
don't, I'll just submit that myself.
did you say you wanted to withdraw?
They haven't formally
Without
done it.
prejudice?
Okay.
We would withdraw without prejudice with the understanding that the fees would be credited to the new filing.
Okay. Is that something that they need to do in writing, or do we need to
Yeah,
accept
they
the
can
motion?
follow it up. We'll accept it, but they can follow it up with something in writing.
That way it just clears,
Okay.
So,
the cloudy, from now, the new one, everything on it. We're not gonna, the old fence or something like that, it's just what the new work is and what you propose to do.
do you guys have to
I think we have to vote to accept the
vote to
withdrawal.
accept it?
Do we need it
entertain a
in
motion.
writing, or are,
I think that's
is
enough
this
for
good
now.
enough?
Yeah,
Yeah,
leave it on the
entertain
record.
a motion to accept the withdrawal.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the One Industrial Ways NOI request to be withdrawn without prejudice.
and for the fees to be applied to a new NOI. Is that
Credited-
right?
Credited to the new.
Credited to the new NOI.
Yes.
Here a
Right.
second.
Second.
We have a motion to accept the withdrawal of the NOI for One Industrial Way and to credit the fees to the new notice of intent. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
So is the DOT?
I left my thing.
I was gonna ask that, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you for coming. That was very helpful.
Well,
Having you here.
I'm very sorry I had somewhere else to be for it. I
No,
would have
that
been here
was,
if I could.
that was lovely. Thank
No
you.
problem.
So attorney leave.
Okay.
No DOT?
Oh, we gotta do turning leaf.
No turning leaf?
No, we have
Oh,
attorney
no,
leave, they're
they
here.
are.
Yeah, it's after 8:32, so we might be able to.
I think I wanna take a 5-minute break.
Oh, no.
Yes, I do.
You can take a
Really?
break when they're presenting.
Who are you,
No, I
Perry?
can't. I can't. No, I have to be here, right?
Steve, can I just
Give me a
interject something
3-minute break.
very, very quickly?
Is it regarding the previous case? It
Oh, yeah,
really
I just
shouldn't
wanna
happen in open meeting.
say something, but maybe I should to
You,
the
you
commissioners.
can't to the commission, you can
as a-
tell me in the hallway, but you can't, I mean, the
They're
closed
closed.
meeting is
Okay, never
closed.
mind.
So let's take a break and I need to go down, use the facility anyway, so take a couple,
Thank you,
3-minute
Laura.
break and, Okay, you're back with the Georgetown Conservation Commission, and what we have next on for hearings is 1 Wilkins Place, rear Lisa Lane, 18 Lisa Lane, and 44 Searle Street, aka Turning Leaf Development, and that's GCC 2013-23. And if I could have the applicant and a consultant, and if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Before we actually open the record, I just wanted to ask a question regarding quorum, since we have 4 members, and this is why we had to refile. So I guess I want to confirm that if we don't close this evening, that all members most likely would be present for the next time, and that this board is eligible to elect the Mullen Rule, because when you phoned me today, I had no idea we were gonna have a short board.
Yeah. I haven't got confirmation on whether, I believe the town adopted that at town meeting. I haven't got a confirmation back about that yet. But
About
that
what?
shouldn't affect tonight, right? If it doesn't, if we don't
does.
continue, if we continue, it will affect it.
If we don't open it, it won't affect it.
Well, we can always continue it. You have to open it, and then you just automatically continue it.
I can't present, is more my point. Again, we
So-
just, it is
Reality.
a difficult thing for the applicant to have to file again after having
So,
already
so from
filed.
your perspective, you don't want to open it unless you're sure we can,
Have a quorum.
a
We
votable
have
quorum.
I mean, I don't want it, because my only option is to say to you, well, every single one of you promise me you're gonna be here in the next meeting. Well, you can't promise me that, and I recognize that. I mean, things happen.
We also can't promise
know
that,
what I mean,
you
though.
can't
What
promise
happens
that
It's
we'll
gonna be
close.
closing it.
You can't promise that you can close it, but we deal with that every single meeting. There's never a guarantee that it will ever get closed out. There's never a promise that the same members will be at the next meeting. So it's kind of,
No, but you have very few members applicants have borne the burden that we have by going through as many months and then have to reapply, and then,
we've actually had one that's been going for 10 years, and they've reapplied twice. So again, you don't know our history, so
I kinda
I understand
do,
where you're coming
but
from,
it's,
but,
trust me when I tell you, I've been doing this for 25 years, it's very unusual.
but there's no way, there's
No,
no
I don't
way,
expect you to warrant your presence, is my point. I'm not
There's no
asking.
way to answer the
But
question.
couldn't we
though.
just continue it then till the next meeting, until the 4 of us were here again?
What's that gonna buy us now? Just
If more people show up, I just, like, your board consists of 7 people, is somebody
Well,
on?
we're short on the board right now.
We have 2
We
active
have
members that aren't here.
6.
One could not make it today, the other one I haven't heard from in a couple of meetings. So we're really only talking
Well,
one person.
if you had, say if you can, well, I'm just
Are
trying
you
to think.
concerned that 4 is not enough?
No, I'm concerned that if somebody,
We
if
won't.
one of you aren't able to attend,
How do we resolve that, though?
But couldn't we just continue it to a time when, like, suppose only 3 of us were here in August? Don't we just continue it to September when we would all be here, and then we could work that
we
way?
could do that again, yep. It's just that, that's what I'm trying to figure out, is if it's worth opening tonight, because at least then you'd begin the process and get the information, and the abutters who've shown up would, be able to have that process. I'm just trying to, gauge it, because I know that one of the members, like I just confirmed, that one of your members actually is, I saw the term expired 2014, so I know that member didn't get reappointed.
Right.
So, I'm like, all right, so you're down 1 member, so no matter what, there's only 2 members who are even eligible, because that seat can never be able to hold the vote if we were to hold tonight,
Correct.
right? Because they're not an admitted member.
But what are you looking for to resolve that? There's no
Well, I mean, just what
guarantees.
anybody would, is a full board. So that's why I'm saying, I don't know
Oh, you're
if
looking for
we're.
a full
let me
board.
finish. So I don't
Better
know,
votes.
usually you
So,
do
so
want that.
you basically, you're looking for the full complement of what we have.
Or the possibility, so if I knew that you
That's, and that's
actually
hard for
had
me to
the,
guarantee that, that's.
Yeah.
but if I knew the Mullen Rule was applicable, that's a little bit more easy, because remember when I had asked you 6
Yeah.
meetings ago, I think, actually it was, because it was downstairs, if the Mullen Rule, if you had ever enacted it, and it had been said yes, so I felt very comfortable, but Steve called me today and told me that he didn't know if it had been, and
I
it,
believe it was, but I don't have it in writing. I like to have things in writing, so I can forward you, here's the date, here's the motion. I don't have that personally.
I think
we
we,
did.
I think we were required to.
I
believe
think we did, but
yeah.
I'm saying I could not give the piece of paper that said we did. That's all I
Right.
said. I didn't say I don't think we did. I said, I
But
believe we
we've-
did, but I
We've
do
been,
not have the
we've
piece
been
of paper.
following the Mullen Rule for years.
Yeah, I agree.
We have to.
if you enact it, then you as a board member absolutely have the right to review and then sit. So I just, that's why I was, you know, you just get, you just, you know, you want the process just to be efficient, and it's efficient, what's more
Smoother,
efficient.
smoother than
And
bumpier.
what's more efficient for you, you know, I mean, quite frankly, it's, you're gonna have to rehear everything again too, so.
Do we
It's
wanna
that-
continue this
Well, it's
then?
up to my client if what you wanna step out of the room. It's your call. Do you mind if we just, would it be appropriate? Thank you, I appreciate
As
that.
long as it's not half an
No,
hour.
And it would
literally
be,
a minute.
and it would be what, 3 weeks out?
When the next meeting is? 4 weeks, it's like 4 weeks. August 14th.
August 14th would be the next date.
Thank you very much.
So,
How many do I need for a vote? Could you guys vote now?
Yeah, they could.
You're afraid of a 2-2, right?
We can't really talk about it, we're in open meeting, sorry.
We haven't opened it yet, we haven't opened the hearing yet, really.
oh, that's why we're shushing.
Talk about the weather, we can talk about bikes, you know.
Motorcycles,
So what kind of motorcycles do you like? Harleys?
2 wheels,
Or 2 wheels?
no training wheels.
Ooh, what about those icky ones with 2 wheels in the front and one
No, they
behind?
got them retractable now.
Oh, really?
Well, the ones with the training wheel, the Can-Am training wheels.
Did you see that kid on TV? He's like 12, inventor, retractable,
Retractable wheels.
retractable, training wheels. For his sister.
Yes.
He would prefer to proceed, based on, you know, the fact that many of the board members believe that the Molineux law was enacted, and Steve does believe that it had been. So we felt comfortable proceeding, because in the event the other 2 members were to want to participate, all they have to do is review the video, which I can see you're doing. So if it's okay with the board, we'd love to open up the hearing.
Okay. And I'll just repeat it being on or after 8:30, I'm gonna open up a notice of intent, a continuation for 1 Wilkins Place, rear Lisa Lane, 18 Lisa Lane, and 44 Searle Street, AKA Turning Leaf. And that's GC 2013-23. And if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Most certainly. Jill Mann here on behalf of the applicant, Turning Leaf LLC. Tom O'Connell is here, he's the principal. Here with me this evening is Rich Williams from Williams and Sparadis, the site design engineer in connection with this project. This project consists of a 45-acre parcel of land, and I apologize for the repetition, but that's what's in it. So the property consists of a 45-acre parcel of land. It is a compilation of several individual parcels. It consists of, as you had said when you read the notice, 1 Wilkins Way, 44 Searle Street, 18 Lisa Lane, and then the property that's considered rear Lisa Lane. And you can see the parcel laid out clearly. We are proposing to subdivide the property into 22 residential home sites. And we are also proposing to create a 14.5 to 14.9 acre open space parcel of land that provides some connections with regard to the town-owned parcels, or potential therefore. When we had designed this project, we did so in keeping with the regulations promulgated by this board and the bylaws adopted by your town. In fact, we did respond to many of the concerns listed in the bylaw with regard to special conditions, and extended the buffer for certain resource areas pursuant to that specific regulation, which requires that if you have a resource area that abuts a vernal pool, that budding piece within 200 feet, that small area would then be enlarged to a 100-foot buffer. And Rich Williams will go through that for you to show you exactly where that extended buffer is, as well as where all of the other buffer that pertain to the resource area are. The plan will show all of the wetland areas. In addition, we did maintain and hold true to not building within that no disturb area, as well as not building within that special condition setback as required pursuant to your bylaw and regulations. In addition to that, we attempted to have very limited activity within the 55 to 75-foot area. In fact, as shown on the plan, you'll see that there are some stormwater facilities that actually are included within that disturbance area, but again, there are no structures, and the roadway is out of that area. there is activity within the 75-foot area, again, related to stormwater management, and to some extent, some home development where we have some grading. Again, no structures. This particular property has gone through a review by BSC, both for stormwater management as well as compliance with your regulations. The compliance with your regulations was conducted by Jillian Davies, and we have received from her a final letter. Her letter and her review entailed reviewing all of your regulations, and in fact confirming that we did honor the no disturb areas, we honored the special condition setback areas, and we honored the required setback areas as well. In addition, Dominic Rinaldi, again from BSC, reviewed all of the stormwater management systems and basically certified, or I shouldn't say certified, he reviewed and confirmed that those particular facilities do comply with the stormwater management regulations, both locally and from the DEP. This project has received approval, you should know, we have received approval from the planning board, and have received the approval based on essentially a no waiver for the main roadway coming in and a small waiver for one of the subdivisions. At this point, I think it's probably a good idea to turn it over to Rich. The only other aspect would be that we do have access from the subdivision to that open space, and it's shown as a walking path. The actual walking path where there is any disturbance ends at the beginning of the buffer, so we did not disturb or propose to disturb any area with that connection. We just proposed a path leading down that people could traverse. And we did provide for a very, very small parking area on the right-of-way, not in somebody's lot, because I think a concern when we originally were designing was that there was some, activity within people's yards, and that was a concern, and we actually pulled those streets up, so that's provided for. And we did provide for water stub connections for the town, so just to give the town flexibility in being able to do things later in time, we have provided 2 stub connections. So no disturbance again, but possibility, so in the town in the future wants to do something, it may.
Just refresh my memory, how wide is that path? If they were to find.
Oh, it's the path itself, the allowed area is what, 15? 15 feet, but the path itself
The
is
easement
quite
is,
small.
is 20 feet,
20 feet,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I just
but the
couldn't-
path is substantially smaller than that. I think it's 6 feet.
And it meanders a bit. but you-
What is a water stub connection?
The water department expressed interest in having the possibility at a future date to connect their water loop, or their water system from this side of Georgetown over to North Street. And they have some parcels in there that are making their way to a connection, and we've provided a connection to the open space should they want to connect, they would have that ability
Okay,
to connect the water system.
super, thanks.
Okay, I think at this point, Rich can stand up and go through the plan for you, and that way we can address your questions and issues as well afterward.
So for anyone who's not familiar with the site, the topography slopes generally from Lisa Lane out to the wetland. There's a ridge in here, this flows to the wetland that surrounds the site. This wetland ultimately discharges to a wetland that goes out and underneath North Street. On this side of the property, the land slopes towards the wetlands on this side. There's a wetland here that discharges to an intermittent stream, and then a wetland that contains within it a vernal pool. That discharges to an intermittent stream which dies out, but then the flow from that goes into this wetland system here, which again connects out to the wetland system that basically surrounds this property. All of our roadways have been designed so that the runoff from the construction, the impervious areas, is collected within the drainage system and discharges to stormwater management areas. There are 6 on the site, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those areas are infiltration basins, which provide, as a requirement in stormwater management, the stormwater management policy, that is, treatment of the runoff from the roadway system before it exits the property or exits those systems. So each of those allows the site to meet stormwater management. The state requires that you provide 80% suspended solids removal, which is the particulate that is within the stormwater. In our case, we are providing in excess of that. It's like 86%, so we're above what is required. These stormwater management areas also provide a mechanism for infiltration into the ground. We have about 5 times the amount of required infiltration. So each of these has an area below the outlet, so water goes into it and percolates into the ground, recharging the groundwater system. So those areas allow us to meet stormwater management. We've also provided for snow storage areas, various places throughout the site. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here. Those have been provided as requested by your commission. And those are areas that snow can be stored during snowstorms. We've kept all of the roadways out of the 100-foot buffer, with the exception of this small section, which the sidewalk and roadway construction lie between the 75 and the 100-foot buffer, but there is nothing other than grading closer than 75 feet. There is some grading here between 75 and 50, all of which meets the bylaw setback requirements. The area that Jill was speaking of regarding the extra protection areas, we've provided for. This is an off-site vernal pool, and any 100-foot buffer areas that lie within 200 feet of that, which are all of this, we've provided with extra protection, and there is no work proposed in those. We did at one point have a stormwater management area here, which we removed and enlarged the stormwater management area on lot 17 to accept that flow so that we can be out of that. The other vernal pool is here, and everything within the 100-foot buffer zone is left intact. And we've also provided the commission with a plan that shows proposed no cut, no disturb markers, and I've got that under here, but it's also been emailed to the commission. I know it's hard to see for people in the back of the room, but we've got concrete markers that are proposed along the path and along all of the areas that are proposed as no disturbance. And for the most part, we are outside the 100-foot buffer. There are some places along here that we're up to 50 feet from the wetland, but only in a couple of cases, here and here. The 2 water stubs that Jill spoke of are located here and here. This is also the location of the proposed path, so that people can park in these 3 parking spaces and traverse along this easement. There is a natural footpath or access to the open space parcel F. Through that spot, there is just an intermittent stream, so if you go out there today, you can walk across it, and that will continue to be the case. This is the open space parcel F, which is like 14.9 acres. Within that 14.9 acres, there's approximately, or there's more than 9 acres of upland. And I think there were at least 2 acres of area that was outside the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. And I think with that, I'll open up to questions.
Rich, that vernal pool on the far right, I see that it encroaches on about 3 or 4 of the property lots there,
Correct.
sites. How are we gonna protect that 100-foot buffer from the homeowners? How will that be?
Well, there's concrete markers proposed around the whole 100-foot buffer.
And that'll go in before construction, before they start laying the trees down and what have you, clearing the site?
Well, we should talk about that. I think that they should go in early in the process, but I'm not sure at what point makes most sense. I think because there is some construction that's involved with those, and they're
Yeah, usually, yeah,
concrete markers. Usually the silt fence goes in, you cut the trees, and then you can go in and put the markers. I think that would be a logical sequence. I'd hate to do it, you know, if the place was all wooded, would be a difficult process.
it's pretty typical they go in.
Yeah, I think the commission, the past, since I've been here, it goes in with siltation so that when you inspect the silt fence, you can inspect the boundaries. Anytime after that, it just seems to get harder because once the process is started, the silt fence is kind of a good starting place when that gets inspected. To the point of, it's some heavy equipment going through there. Technically, you're not supposed to be disturbing that area. Accidents do happen. 1 or 2 of the boundaries might get broken in process, they just have to get replaced, but I would strongly recommend doing it when the silt fence goes in. And I actually have a order of conditions, an attachment drafted tonight that has that in there for it to be done during siltation
As far
installation.
as the construction sequence is concerned, yeah.
But again, that's open to discussion. I mean, I get why you would say that, but I think we have some reasons for wanting it in a little sooner.
Any other questions?
Maybe we could agree to do it in like most cases, but maybe if there was some particular cases where there was some trees or we had to get out of the way to kind of make it a little more feasible to get them in, I'd be okay with that.
I mean, if it's a very, very specific cases, like during like when I go out to do the silt inspection,
Yeah.
there's 1 or 2 that, for whatever reason.
Right.
Yeah, we could agree to it, and if there was an issue, if we could have you come out and
Work
look
it
at
out,
it, just
yeah.
explain.
There's always a condition, work with me with any
Yeah,
differences.
we have in the past.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I like to condition it so that the majority of them go in first. If there's 1 or 2 that can't, we can work with
Also
you.
helps the equipment from accidentally going beyond.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason they should, but tree falls the wrong way, I understand it happens, but for the
And-
most part, it shouldn't be a problem.
Don't we normally have granite bounds, not concrete?
Correct. The regulations do not they do not say it can be either one. Typically, people put in granite because I think it looks nicer and it's more attractive for,
Last longer.
you know, for a homeowner buying it, concrete can look not as attractive. But our regs do not specify one or the other. It says either.
It's not wood.
Just not
Yeah,
wood.
not wood.
Blueberry helps concrete,
And then we typically have our
Blueberry
plaques on
pines.
top of it.
Crispin pines.
yeah.
We have little
Those are-
GCC plaques that we put on top of it, the ones that people like to mow around.
They're asking me, yeah.
We, yeah, we'd rather do concrete.
As long as it meets 4x4, 2 feet in, 2 feet out, placards put on the top.
It is. I guess the only bounds, Tom O'Connell, the applicant, the only bounds that I guess we could maybe hold off on is along the walkway we're asking to put them in. So if we could just do maybe all the ones along the border, we do the erosion control and then come back and lay those in. Because you're gonna have a lot of grading and
Yeah.
stuff in that area, whereas you're not gonna have any grading along the external boundary.
So my my main reason for suggesting putting them in before is because what's happening a lot are people aren't putting those in, house gets sold, constructed, someone moves in, all of a sudden the bounds get put in. Maybe for that, again, a lot of these places are being pre-sold and built, you know, custom. You can always put them in after the trees come down to that point, if
Right.
that helps.
Yeah.
For that one stretch, and then the rest of them go in during the siltation.
Now, you'd need a separate, in some cases, a separate NOI for some of
Correct.
these individual homes. This is the subdivision NOI.
Right, there are a handful that would require us to come back.
Is that one of them?
Those are not one of them. Those two are not.
Okay. The two, because that's splitting two properties.
Yeah, the lot line goes, down the, so.
Okay. I mean, I can always specify that those in particular can get put in after the trees come down, but I wouldn't do it much later than that.
And they're 25 feet apart?
It
I
depends.
think that the regs say 35 feet,
And if you
or
have-
at major turns. The
And
curves.
you had a 5 in it.
Just a detail, what's the date on this plan?
Well, this is a compilation
Yeah.
of the,
So
the
what's the-
plan. It's dated October 10th, 2013, and revised through May 20th.
And that was the plan that you, when you flipped it over, that's what we were looking at? That showed the markers on it?
Red markers on it.
Yes, those do not show on that plan. Those show on the plan that I sent you, but it is the same plan.
Yeah, I just need a full size for the,
Okay.
for the file copy, I guess is my point.
Yep.
If you have that tonight, if you
Yep.
can leave it, that way, because
I do.
the emailed ones are useless for full size.
I do.
Yeah, you want that one.
Do we need to cite both of those plans, or?
The dates, the date that he gave me is the one that would be cited in any motion.
No, I mean the plan, this one, and then the other one with the bounds.
Right, that's,
Are they separate?
no, that's been submitted, that you have hard copies of, for sure. This is the plan that's got the bounds on it. Yeah.
As far as sequencing and putting in the subdivision, I mean, is your intent to kind of clear cut and then put the road in, or just kind of clear out where the road is and then work on the house
Road and
lots?
stormwater management area would be cleared first, and then on an individual basis, as the homes are proposed to be started, then those.
Are
would
there
be-
any trees you propose to save on the lot? I mean, obviously, it's
Yeah, we have
existing forest.
limit of disturbance lines throughout the site, that demarcate what we plan to save.
No, actually, yeah, right, but I mean, closer to where the houses are, I mean, you're gonna actually clear out, I mean, obviously, in any home lot, you might have trees.
The idea is
driven
to
out.
save as many trees as possible. It depends on
House
the
lots?
final design of the house. And we don't know those yet. It's gonna be on an individual basis,
So is it,
owner by owner.
is it fair to say you can do the road, the stormwater as phase one, and then as you do a lot and develop it, you'll clear those lots individually? I think the
Yep.
concern is clear cutting the whole thing until house is built. So you're gonna do it nutrition.
And then, of course, then
roadway
you
to
have,
stormwater.
stormwater issues, or if there's delays, and you've got, a big wasteland,
We're not doing that. We even
Yeah.
spoke to the applicant about it and exactly the way you cited it.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, unless we've got some lots sold as we
That
go
was the
down road,
point, as
then,
we
you know,
sell,
yeah.
we.
You might do other than 2 lots get pre-sold,
Right.
but
Right.
you-
Just not
you're
clear.
not
Could be
clear.
4 lots at once we build, but it'll be when we build them.
Yep.
We gotta do the road and I believe,
Infrastructure.
20 feet either side of the roadway.
Makes sense.
and obviously put in your utilities and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Are they above ground or below ground? Just out of curiosity.
Below.
Any questions?
I don't think so.
So the waivers are involved at that first entrance point, just for grading the
No
roadway?
waivers anymore.
No waivers.
Not even,
Isn't that, yeah,
okay,
I know.
wow.
And
No, we were able to move the road,
And John Davis
enough
Slate's
to,
better.
to not need waivers.
Sorry, I remembered that being closer, okay.
It was originally,
It
Mhm.
was.
but they did a great
Was.
job moving it out.
Steve, is there any special conditions we would need on this particular one?
My only ones were regarding the no-cut boundaries
Yep.
being put in with siltation, but I can modify that. The vernal pool to be certified within 2 growing seasons, within 2 seasons, and typically the land to be donated within 1 year of issuance of the COs, the order of conditions. Just to make sure, like, if the land is to be donated, it actually does. We had recently a project where
We've had projects where land never ended up getting donated
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it gets kind of forgotten about because we're
As
busy
the
and
development goes, you know.
and everyone's
stops
claiming,
for a
what
while.
land, what are you talking about?
So those are my only 3, and just generally, working with me on. So if there are some issues with the stone bounds on that access, work with me offline to resolve any issues that come up during the construction.
I like the plan, it's drawn, you did what you had to do, but I really, really wanna stress those no-cut bounds. I've got a picture in my phone. They mow around it.
Yeah, people come in
Okay.
and complain that they wreck
That's-
their lawnmowers because they're having trouble mowing around them.
Seriously, that's, I mean, you've gone no waivers, so I mean, it is what it is.
That's something that's our responsibility too, for, information.
You wanna get nominated as the
Yeah.
no-cut bounds girl?
I guess that's why we want them in
You
place
gotta be
before,
busy.
and-
Yeah, I've been already been chased down one driveway.
This week.
Yeah, she's up Pitbull.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's me. However, we do have an example of a no-cut area behind Parker River Landing, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful area. So it doesn't have to be icky looking. It's lovely.
Again,
All right.
we've had issues too in cases where the applicant has, where we've designated the stone bounds to go, they put the house within like 3 feet of the stone bounds, and of course, in perpetuity,
Same exact property.
we have people like, well, can we cut around it, can we remove this? No, that's what it was put there for, but I mean, that was purely, the particular developer, he was
Yeah.
Well, the
within
grass was
their
high,
rights to
the
put it
grass
up
was
to
higher
that
than the
point.
post, they didn't see it, and they decided to mow.
So that was their own sighting issue problem, so obviously we don't wanna site those individual houses like right next to bounds if we can.
Right.
'Cause it just creates a long-term problem.
So I don't think there's
I think we've
anything
done
else
a
we
good
can ask for.
job doing that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so as long as stuff doesn't get moved after the fact. Are there any abutters who would like to make comments on, or please identify yourself for the record for the 1 Wilkins Place, Lisa Lane, Turning Leaf project? Identify yourself
Kevin
for the record.
Duncan, 46 Earl Street. I think the developers have done a good job. I got a couple of stupid questions. What keeps swimming pools and the leaching fields out of the vernal pond? Anybody can buy a house, anybody can throw up a swimming pool, right?
Well, if it's within our jurisdiction, again, it would be a permitting issue, but be it a swimming pool or a septic system, they would have to file just like these folks are, and have a notice of intent hearing to put anything like that, any structure within 100 feet of a bordering vegetated wetland, vernal pool, et cetera.
And when they
And
come
my
in to
last
build, sorry,
Excuse me?
when they come in to build, their construction company has to come in to see our building inspector, thank you. And then, we actually are involved in that process, so things are not built without our, understanding of what resources are out there. So we're involved in that building process, and we can let the homeowner, the new homeowner, know that this is an area that you can't go into,
Yeah,
you can't use.
Otherwise, we end up in that enforcement process
Yeah.
that we talked about in one of the earlier hearings, so that's what, when people don't follow the rules and regulations.
And my last question, I'm gonna go to the map. Can you just describe again the developer what this stormwater thing's gonna look like? I know a guy who lives right here. I was just wondering about the drainage. You know, I have.
Do you like
You do
that?
too. I gotta live with her.
That's my fault.
You asked him to ask the questions?
No, I was curious, yes.
Yeah, so it's a sloping, the side slopes that contain, during a storm event, contain stormwater. There's a little pocket at the outlet of this pipe which is located here, that takes the initial flow, and it's called a forebay. That traps the initial sediment and then flows over a little berm here, which is about 3 feet high, and goes into this stormwater management area for further infiltration and treatment. And then only in larger storm events does it flow out. And that's the route that the outflow goes now, which is right here. There's actually, in this case, there's a reduction in the amount of flow that's anticipated off of the property because we're holding back more than was being held back before.
Will you be leaving some of the trees that will absorb water as well, or are you just gonna clear it?
No, there's really not any, other than for the pipe, there's no reason to clear that.
Because it's a
so-
pretty wooded area
Yeah.
now, yeah.
And I think the developer has talked about keeping that buffer.
Mm-hmm, that's right. Okay, thanks. So is there standing water, like?
During
or-
storm events, there will
Okay,
be.
but then it quickly gets absorbed, or is it?
It's within 72 hours,
Oh, okay.
But the idea is to hold it back long enough so that you don't have an increase onto your property.
And is that something that has to be maintained by somebody?
Yeah, there's a,
Vegetation or?
there are maintenance requirements for it. It's basically mowing.
Now,
Is that,
is there, who would be, I guess, responsible for the maintenance of those systems?
My understanding, the town is gonna maintain the drainage.
After this roadway's accepted, they actually take over all drainage. Because the roadways that are draining
It's
through.
accepted.
That's not always the case. I mean, sometimes there could be a association that would do these
Yeah.
kinds of things, so. It really depends how the developer's
Sometimes
set
if you
up.
don't have, if you have a homeowners association, it continues to own the road.
How long a time would that be typically before the town would take over? Would it be like a year? What happens between the town taking over?
It's the final,
Well, the developer owns the maintenance during the development and until such time that the town takes it over. So the town will have inspections and make sure that they're, receiving a functioning system.
All right, so it'd be the developer who maintain it up until
Right,
that point.
and there's a sequence of, with the planning board, we've got the whole sequence, we're gonna do temporary erosion controls, and then once the drainage is in, then we build the ponds finally, and so there's a whole process, but,
and there's an as-built that's delivered, you have to certify that the
Right.
ponds are correctly built. And then once the final top coat goes on, you have to wait for a certain period of time to make sure that it withstood a winter. And then you go back, and then the planning board certifies, then you go to the selectmen, then you go to town meeting.
That can take a while.
Piece of cake.
Oh, Steve's 100% right.
We have one
it
in
can
town
take a
that's
while.
out 10 years and it's not, it's still in construction. So I mean, if they sell all the houses and build them in 2 years, which I'm sure they'd love to, then it's a pretty quick process, but
That's what we're hoping
it
for.
could take, there's one in town that's still, the last 2 or 3 houses being built right now. You guys closed out a project a few years ago that was
Right.
probably 10 years old also.
right,
They brought that through to completion and the town accepted that a while back.
there were actually a couple.
So it depends. It depends. There's some that haven't been accepted that are 30 years old too.
Well, yeah, there's cases where the developer went out of business and the project was half done, and
So just time-wise, it's a huge range.
any further questions?
I have one. Bob Ferrazza, 50 Searle Street. Could you tell me, in the adverse event here, where is this water gonna flow?
Right where it does now, it flows across that, there's a, yeah.
Into our yard.
Your yard, Susan's yard, and then
Yeah.
my swamp.
But that's where it goes now. The idea is to not make that any worse.
So it'll still, hopefully it won't be worse
Right.
than what it is today.
That's
but
correct.
Gets kind of bad in the rain today. So I'm just worried about that. Thank you for moving that. That would address my concern, was the retention pond here. Because this vernal pool, which doesn't show, has a spillway that goes this way when it overflows, which I live here. So, that was good. because it gets to be like a river.
It is a
in the
river.
front.
Right, I've seen it during a rainstorm.
Down, especially the past couple of days, I mean, it really comes down, Cyril washes out, comes in and on the gravel driveway that goes between 50 and 52, Cyril, down through there. And I have a swamp in the front and the side. And I can't use most of my yard. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't change, there's not a mechanism to change that. But, well, as long as it doesn't make it worse. Yep, it won't be worse.
Did you say you thought it would capture more than it
It does,
is
yeah.
currently?
Any more questions?
No. I have no more questions. You do?
No, so we're kind of on time.
Oh,
Well,
I actually remember you saying that.
what's the commission's pleasure?
I think we should approve it.
Was that a motion?
It currently meets the regulations.
There isn't anything else we can ask them to
Quite a few
do.
modifications
You
to
can-
make it meet the regulations.
You can still request conditions, I just can't think of anything to ask. You can request. I got-
Relocate
I
all
got
the
3.
chipmunks and,
I've tried doing that, by the way, they come back.
I met a woman
control valves.
the
I
other
have those
day.
humane traps.
She said to me, "But you're the conservation people. What about all the nature out there?" She made me cry. Anyway, so
was that a
yes,
motion?
relocate all the chipmunks. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, is this what we're gonna do? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose a motion to approve the NOI for 1 Wilkins Place, rear Lisa Lane, 18 Lisa Lane, 44 Soul Street, turning leaf, GCC 2013-23, DEP 1610771. And the plan date is, I know the rev date, I don't know the actual,
Nope.
October 10th, 2013,
Yes.
10,
Rev through May 20th.
13 with the rev,
5/20.
yeah, of 5/20/14.
And there were some special conditions.
Right, as, Steve, could you read the special conditions, please?
Donated land will be donated within 1 year of issuance of the OOC. No cut bounds will be installed and markers attached when siltation is installed. Vernal pools to be certified by applicant within 2 years of issuance of order of conditions.
Did you still want to say the bounds with the siltation? Or,
I
and
did.
that's something you're going to
That was in there.
discuss?
That was in
Okay.
there. Yeah, that was in there.
Oh, well, I thought maybe we were changing. That's, okay.
All of this is kind of subject
Situationally.
to, work with me in the field. That's something
Okay.
that we've agreed upon. The commission said it's
Okay.
fine. We can pretty much consider it when it comes time for inspection. It won't be in place, and I'll understand why. So that's fine.
What about the donated open space? Is that part of the?
Yep.
You already said
Yeah.
that.
Within a year.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's just those 3 conditions.
Yep.
I'll entertain a second.
Second.
The motion has been seconded to approve the notice of intent for 1 Wilkins Place, rear Lisa Lane, 18 Lisa Lane, 44 Searle
just
Street,
wanna say
turning
that
leaf,
over and over
et
and
cetera, et cetera.
No, we don't have to.
I hope you
right?
don't put that on a sign, but
We don't have to.
That's gonna be a long sign.
I live at, with the special conditions read by Steve. Is there any further discussion?
My only question, all the plans I have for the final are all marked up. Would you guys just mind sending me next week, like a full set of everything clean?
Sure.
So I can recycle all of the marked up ones? Thank you.
Any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
No, I'm not opposing, I'm just,
Okay.
Abstaining.
no, I'm not abstaining, I'm eyeing.
Can we start over again? Can you start the motion again, because you chimed in when he was saying,
Yeah,
I don't know which that was going towards, sorry.
I'll entertain a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining?
I already
Motion carries.
make everything complicated.
Thank you,
Yes,
Jeff.
we did. Fine, but we got to do
Right to the end.
Now we gotta close the hearing. I'll entertain a motion to close the
Mr.
hearing.
Chairman, can we close 1 Wilkins Place?
GCC,
You don't have to,
Second.
you don't have to do that.
second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to close the notice of intent for 1 Wilkins Place, et cetera, et cetera. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, all abstained.
Thank you. You guys gonna miss us?
You'll miss us.
Missed you so far.
Can you mail that stuff out like Monday, Tuesday next week, just so we can get it in the file? Yeah, but I just like a full-size hard copy, clean. Thank you. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, actually, you're gonna have to come in to pick up the order of conditions, so bring it in like, we'll probably call you Tuesday, you can bring the full set in and you come to pick it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay, that's all right. Good night. Let's keep this rolling, one more.
The DOT here.
Oh, she's sitting over there nice and quiet.
Yeah, so,
Take care.
thanks, guys.
Luck. It being on or well after 8:40, I'm going to open up a new RDA for Interstate 95, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, GCC 2014-17. And that's full width asphalt, pavement excavation, micro drilling and relay with hot mix asphalt on main line and ramps, upgrading of guardrails, adjusting and cleaning of drainage structures, reset granite edges, installing transition curbing, rumble strips.
Rumble.
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 That's the part that tells you you're
Strips and
driving off the
slotted
road.
pavement
It
markers.
says Kyle turn.
Very good.
Kyle turn.
You know it well.
It's late. That's how, oh, it just bounces
Doing
off
better
from
than
inside
I
and outside.
I go
like
from
a
one
bumblebee.
side to the other.
I'll be doing that tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
All right, if I could have the applicant, and if you could identify yourself, please.
Renata Welch, District 4, Mass DOT District 4 Environmental Engineer. And I'm here tonight to request a negative determination of applicability for the subject project. The entire project it measures about 8.8 miles, and it goes through towns of Georgetown, Newbury, West Newbury, and ends in Newburyport. In Georgetown, we'll be starting just north of Raleigh and Georgetown Town Line, and proceed northerly to Newbury Town Line. All the work that we propose to do will take place within the state highway layout limits. So basically, edge of pavement to edge of pavement. That's how we define that. In terms of resource areas within our project, we will be working within riverfront areas. We'll be crossing Muddy Brook, which is a tributary to Mill River.
Is some of that also, is some of that area endangered species area, where the highway goes through, I think, right?
It probably nicks a spot, yeah.
Because the state forest gets included in part of that too.
Yeah, there are some vernal pools that are along the corridor of I-95. There's the Muddy Brook, and then there's also Willer Brook, which is a tributary to Parker River. We will be working within the 100-foot buffer zone associated with those waterways. It just so happens that the highways happen to be within areas that are resource areas, so we have to working within the existing conditions. But to protect those areas, we're gonna be installing erosion control barriers. Typically what we propose to do is we do the filter tubing, which is the equivalent of straw wattles. We do silt sacks and catch basin locations. Those are, maintained throughout the duration of the project. In terms of the actual work, as you've read, we'll be stripping existing asphalt top cover. We'll be milling the pavement and installing hot mix asphalt overlay. I think it's about 1.5 to 2 inch thick. And then we're gonna be upgrading existing guardrails, wheelchair ramps, to meet the existing, the new ADA standard requirements.
Wheelchair ramps on the highway?
On I-95?
Well, we have this scope is kind of comprehensive for all the projects, so when you get to Newburyport area, we're actually finishing in Newburyport, in town of Newburyport. We're not taking into town line, we're ending, I think it's, Story Avenue,
Yep.
so I think in about that area, we're doing some wheelchair ramps. We're gonna be upgrading, well, cleaning and rebuilding the drainage structures, but only within the roadways, so we're not gonna be touching any outfalls, anything that, it's along the side of the road.
You're gonna be enlarging any of those?
No, all we're doing is basically, like I said, cleaning
Cleaning
and
them.
rebuilding, and clearly bringing up the frames and covers of any other utilities that are within the roadway to meet the new top, elevation of the roadway. And other like incidental work, marking the road, and then other areas like in Newbury, we have some bridge repairs, which don't apply to your town, but there's some incidental work associated with that too. So that's basically it. It's the nature of our project.
And how long do you anticipate the project lasting?
Well,
At least from, in our jurisdiction, I would say.
I would say, it's not gonna start until probably early spring, and I would say it would take probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, going through Georgetown. That's kinda conservative, I think. They like to get that done pretty fast, and I would imagine a lot of work is gonna take place at nighttime, just to minimize the impacts.
So you do go across some really significant waterways.
We do.
Coming through our area,
Yes.
including like herringbrews and all sorts of kind of valuable tributaries.
Yes, the resource areas seem to favor highway environment, or they were there before the highway, so.
Well, I think probably it was the philosophy when highways were put in at this era that they looked upon resource areas as wastelands, so that's what they did.
Yes, things have definitely changed over the years, yes.
Don't put it across farmland.
Yes. So by virtue of that, yes, we have riverfront areas, we have, crossings, and we're within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands and, other resource areas. It's pretty much true for the entire length of the project. I mean, there is a lot of that continues into Newbury, West Newbury, and Newburyport, but.
Why spring? Is it just because you're coming up from the south and that's when you'll arrive at our house?
No, I think the project is in about 75, I would say almost probably 90% design, 75 to 90. So we're hoping to go to out to bids in the fall, and just that's how it, we don't want to probably start midwinter, so it's gonna try to get through winter and.
Is this just northbound?
Yes.
Both sides?
Well, it's both sides.
Both sides.
Both sides, yeah. And we'll do some ramps too, interchange ramps. And 133 ramp.
Well, of course, Steve would be involved after the infiltration areas were pressed up to check it out.
Correct.
Yeah,
Infiltration or siltation?
Siltation.
I'll do those. You have to teach me how to do the other ones.
Yeah,
I know how to do
you
those.
gotta go crawl right in them. You
still.
crawl right in them. You run right down them like them chipmunks.
You gotta get an Achilles.
Yeah, that's pretty typical, yeah, we'll, once those are in, we'll give the commission notify you, so we can come out there and, inspect those, make sure that.
Any other questions?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the Mass DOT GCC 2014-17.
So you're issuing a negative determination.
Oh, I'd like to issue a negative determination on the RDA for
Any
Mass
conditions?
DOT. Conditions to be, state will inform us when
So
siltation.
siltation's in, so I can do my
Siltation,
inspections.
so Steve can do his inspection.
Just work with me. If there are any issues, real time.
Work in the field.
Work with me
Real
before.
time.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's a motion, and it's been seconded to issue a negative determination for the I-95 Mass DOT RDA. Is there any further discussion? make a note that there are no abutters. If there are no questions, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. I'll entertain a motion to close the RDA.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the RDA for Mass DOT GCC 2014-17.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to close the RDA for Mass DOT. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All abstaining, all opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Certainly. Sorry to have
Drive
to
safe.
sit here for
Drive
hours
safe.
and hours
It's okay.
and hours.
Good.
Well, I told her it was gonna be quick too, I was like, oh, you should be in that.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, you never,
yours
you
will
never,
be
you
quick.
never tell them that, you never tell them that, never.
They read my tires.
Maybe
Kiss
I'll,
of death.
I'll put in a request to see if you, if possible, to get me in one of the earlier ones, but I know that's not.
You were like the last one on the agenda, so it just
Yeah.
goes in orders.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
realize that. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, you too. Watch out for the rumble strip.
Ruffle strips? The ruffle strips.
The rubble strips.
This is just documents to sign. This is the RDA that you just approved. One spot to sign. There's only one form for the RDAs. This is the 11 Winter Street, the turf project. One of them, that's the other. There's two for each. And this is the turning leaf order conditions that you guys just approved tonight.
Yeah, it would make an interesting signpost, turning leaf there.
Quite a long one.
Aside from that, I have nothing else.
I'm gonna get out of here before 11.
We did the COC earlier.
Oh, we did, I didn't actually,
I captured it.
okay, did they,
You don't have to.
okay.
It's administrative act.
Nick, I was like, hey, wait on, where's everybody's signature? Nick is being
Is somebody signing
a
a book?
maverick and putting his signature over on the right.
Or are you signing a book?
Am I signing in blue? Yes?
Thank you.
We're all signing in blue.
Awesome.
Why?
Nope.
Oh, that helps us know if,
Figure out which is the original.
As long as one person has blue.
Yeah,
it's
I
easy.
think
Oh, okay.
Okay, I have nothing else.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to
Earlier.
close the meeting.
Yep.
Is there a second to close?
I second it.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to close the hearing, the meeting.
Meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? All abstaining. Good night.